deformities and damage and all, like, also allowed her to tap into something else, really. And I thought that was fascinating, because, like, nowadays in 2025, we'd have those people in a special care home, because they are, well, non-functioning members of society, or at least that's the stamp that we give them, because you can't actively participate, you can't you know pay, you can't, like, really work or pay taxes, so basically you're not well, profitable for the average society. um and I thought it was just interesting that in the old days, we would call someone like that a shaman, because they function on some other plane, on some other plane of existence. And nowadays, we call them crazy and we lock them up.
Yeah, man. And the first thing they want to do to these people is medicate them. And I think there's a reason for this. Hide them away from society and medicate them, not give them an opportunity to interact with people. I think that, like, we're supposed to not know about this stuff. I think, like, there's a reason why the establishment doesn't want us to recognize these ancient roots and how universal they are. And just exactly, it sort of takes away from this whole idea of transhumanism as an agenda that's being pushed upon us. And part of this whole transhumanist agenda is the ideology behind materializing concepts, that we're living in a material reality. That's all there is. And that we need to upgrade these bodies because they're just not good enough, right? They don't want us to see actually when there's something wrong with your body, you can actually perform better, right?
The 20th century, mankind was kind of on a precipice, right? We had reached this certain kind of point where, despite our interest in going to war with each other, here, at least in the West, we were turning corners in, like, where we sat with science and spirituality, right? This was a corner turning time. And I think what terrified them was good men rationalizing not being part of a religion. And so they needed to have a counteraction. So they needed to create atheism as a catch-all, as a godless form of the same social programs that they wanted to continue in culture, when they were pretending they weren't like that back in the day, right? Trust the seance versus trust the science, as the joke goes, right?
I like that one.
Right, exactly. And
put that on a t-shirt.
This is how the 20th century, if you look at 20th century films and stories, who are the main characters, like, throughout World War II era, things like that? Scientists. The scientist was some Chad who could fucking work out, and he was a goddamn fucking genius, and he used his brain, and then once in a while he had to punch a guy and shoot a guy just to show he was Chad. But otherwise, he's just this scientist who's a very healthy alpha male, right? And so these were our mortal heroes, the day the earth stood still had this and all that stuff, right? So mankind, being less bigoted, was open to Eastern mysticism. So they needed to co-opt that, thus why they invented New Age, and why, with the absolute, especially after the war, disinterest in being anti-Jewish anything, now people were looking with new eyes at Kabbalism. But yet we won't talk about the Talmud. Right? So anyway, long story short is, all these new spiritualities were coming online, and this is where Aleister Crowley came to see at the turn of the century, eventually saying there's going to be this Aeon of Horus or this Age of the Hero, right? So I made the superhero references earlier, right? With the anime and with Daredevil and things like that. There's an incredible amount of this real phenomenon. I may have a tiny amount of spider sense. I mean, as one who works with the runes, those are like the spider's web. I mean, I'm naturally going to have some sort of spider sense, it's my manifestation of my force abilities, if we want to get all Kemetan about it.
Yeah, man.
Oh, by the way, I think Slick is here. I think he's waiting to pop in.
Slick is waiting backstage.
Oh, the Slick Star. Where's the Slicker? Ah, hello, Slick. Bum Shiva.
Bum Shiva ma. Bum Borlinad, give thanks and praise.
Yeah, man. Welcome, brother.
Such
Welcome.
a joy.
Those of you that don't know Slick, you all know Slick. Come on, he's the dissident. Go check his channel out. Zerilot's at sign is on here. My is at Bush Whisper. It's on here. At Slick Dissident. I wasn't sure if Slick was going to join, but just at Slick Dissident. Click it in the search tube. You can find all our channels. Slick's Enneagram man. Although he's all over the shop. He's not just Enneagram. He's Greek, mystic, philosophies, spiritual practices, Vedic, the works.
Yes,
It's interesting what you just said as well. I want to go into this is one thing about shamanism that's always bugged me, which is one of the reasons I can't read these books. Well, it's just a lot of the reasons I can't read these books. I actually don't read many books anymore. I stopped reading books many years ago. When I went into the wild and I lived in nature, I like my little boy knows me. Like I'm reading the book. I say I'm busy reading. I'm listening to the birds. The birds are my little news broadcasters these days. They tell me things. Like the skies tell me things. The wind whispers. Listen to the whispers of the wind. So like I try and read the book on the leaves. There's leaves. Or in the rock. You read the book in the rock and there's little pictures. Little like you can see how these guys were doing rock carvings and stuff because they could see these little pictures in the rocks. Wow, what's going? Let me carve around the picture I can see, and then they leave an imprint on the picture because there's little stories happening. It's like hieroglyphics. So, but getting back to shamanism, what one of the things is okay. So the popular theory at the moment is that the word shaman comes from Tungis origins. Tungis, which is what, Eastern North Russia, somewhere around there, right? And the Tungis people, so I looked into this and I thought, well, that's strange because I know that the word Shramana is in the Rig Vedas. That's 3,500 years old. And I've come across the word, very similar sounding word to shaman in Chinese texts. So how can it just be one place? So this became popularized by Juha Jan Hunen. And this guy was a researcher that was researching Russian. He was a Russian historian, basically. And he was researching the language, the etymology, and the cultures of Russia. And so he refuted the original ideas. Now, this was 1917, and I think this is really important to recognize. He came along in 1917 and said, oh, no, you are all wrong. Because there was an original belief before that was different. You're all wrong. The word shaman comes from Tungis language. So when you look at the Tungis language, it's about 500 years old. Or is it 700 years old? Something, it's not very old, right? It's not very old at all. It's a young language, which I was like, it's a very young language. I think shaman's a lot older than that. Because when I'm in the Himalayas, I hear about very ancient lineages and traditions of shaman. Like, come on, man, thousands of years. It's not 500-600 years old. And so this Juha Jan Hunen came along and said that this is where the word shaman came from. But, before him in, say, the 1850s, there was a guy called Max Euler, who was an anthropologist of those times. And they had recognized that the word shaman shramana and shraman, appeared in Vedic texts and appeared in China and appeared in other places. And there's obviously lots of names for these practitioners, right? Like from the Vedic, the Vedas, which are the 3,500-year-old Rig Vedas. A shramana is somebody that uses a drum to go into a trance while chanting the shraman, which are the sacred texts, the sacred chants, in order to have a vision and an experience outside of their body with the devas or the devtas, which are basically animalistic beings that give them insights for healing and can actually possess them and help them to be a transferring agent of healing or necessary guidance or wisdom for the local community. And these people were always called to go and live alone in the wilderness. And so, I mean, this guy, Juha Yunhunen, never studied Sanskrit, never went to India, didn't study anthropology about there. He was studying in Russia. He said, no, it's just a coincidence that there's a linguistic similarity between the text in the Vedas and the text here. And so he refuted what the Max Muller and all the previous anthropologists from the 1700s had been basically recognizing. And this got me like really intrigued. I was like, I wonder if there's a reason why they want us to hinge it upon this particular tribe. So I looked at this tribe and I go, well, their shamanism revolves around using substances. Very interesting. But when you look in the Himalayas, it doesn't revolve around using substances. Those are used as an initiatory tool to initiate you so that you can gain an experience of the other planes of existence. But then the training is done without the substances so that you can do the work. And so I found that really interesting was, I wonder if they're trying to promote the idea that shamanism is about using substances, which is a real popular idea these days. People think if they're drinking ayahuasca or DMT that they're now shaman. They don't realize that, okay, yes, it's part of a training tool, but actually the real shamanic thing has got very little to do with the substances, because the point is that the training should take you there without the substances at some point. And so I got looking to the roots of this language. And so it takes you into the Proto-Indo-European language group. And the Proto-Indo-European language group is the mother language of Russian, interestingly enough, of all the European languages, Sanskrit, Iranian, or what we call Aryan languages, right? It gets really interesting. You look at the Caucasus Mountains, where the Caucasians come from. Gosh, there's links with the Caucasus with the Norse tradition. There's very similar rock paintings, almost identical in the Norse traditions up in Denmark and in the Caucasus Mountains. Very similar practices, even linguistic connections. The Germanic language is quite an old language from the Indo-European, which came from the pre-Indo-European. And when you look at these languages, you find all the same terms. It's very, very interesting. Like, for example, Otto Schroeder was a anthropologist that came up with the idea that 3000 BC onwards, there was this Indo-European people on the steppes. And the steppes is all the way from Europe right across to Far East Asia, right? And through Russia and through a lot of these regions. So there were these people that were basically along this broad sort of area of being. And there were different languages like Uralic. And the Uralic language was considered first to be different, but when they started to study the linguistic, they see there's a lot of similarities with the Indo-European roots and the Proto-Indo-European languages. Like, for example, you look at the Indo-European languages and you look like father is pati in Sanskrit. It is patera in Greek. It is pater in Latin, right? It is pader in Iranian. Interesting. Then you look at mother, it's like mata in Sanskrit. It's mitara in Greek, ancient Greek. It's mater in Latin. It's mat in Russian. Right? So you see all of these languages, and these all come from this ancient language. Now, there was a point where the languages changed, and they went from what's it called? What was that change called? There was a shift that happened that I wrote down that word as a hint chat to try and remind me of the word. Can't seem to find it. But there was this very important shift that happened called the Ruki. Ruki. Now, during the Ruki transformation of this Proto-Indo-European language, the S's became sh, very important, right? So before the sh wasn't a part of the language group, but S's changed to sh and K's changed to S's. And so we can see this, we're talking about 5000 BC plus during this Ruki period. And there was this migration that basically happened right across the steppes, and the migration went to a place that was called, what was the place called? Oxus. So Oxus was an important point where this Proto-Indo-European language was developed to become Indo-European, because this was like ancient settlements. Really, the ruins are still there. They're thousands of years old. They're 5,000-year-old ruins, and they're very similar to the ruins we found in Turkey, right? The ones that everybody's talking about that no one's allowed to excavate. Like, they don't want us to see our roots. And these people had amazing fortifications, and all of these people across the steppes, they were pastoral. They were breeding horses. So there are actual texts that you can find in Syria. What's a region called in Syria? Mitanni. Mitanni in Syria. They've got text which is a treaty made between them and the Hittites, where they can actually check the languages, and they can see that there's this very powerful connection with the Syrian language and the Sanskrit language, and that this migrated into Europe. But there was a previous migration from the place above this, where they split to go north and to the east. So something happened to cause these people to migrate. Weather pattern changes, and so this language shifted. This is why you can find the same word in Sanskrit, the same word. I think this shaman word is coming from such an old place. I think it's Proto-Indo-European of source, and it might have been summon, and then became shaman, something like that. And then it moved and changed its linguistic tones. And so what we're seeing in this Tungis people is just one particular version of a very, very ancient word, which goes right back to the beginnings of civilization. And this is why you find the same word in German, Old German, right?
Yeah.
It all comes from that Proto-European. So this is, I think, a universal word.
It probably is.
They don't want us to know how universal shamanism is. It's the root of every religion, I think.
And
the
language
shaman was the priest class that of our animist understanding of the world, and I think that the Bach sagas take on the origin of the tropical races and the origin of the Arctic races after the Ragnarok explains all these things, because it's been screwed, because the Bach saga, what it says happened is tested by what we now know in our anthropological archaeological records, and root language is a big part of that. So it's an aspect of root language and the tracking of where the artifacts of that language were carried. And that's what happened, because us as the Arctic persons, the people of the North, were ultimately of three original second root races made by the Hyperboreans, who were still locked behind the ice wall during the Ice Age. And this is where the Rus people, the Germanic, and the Norse people came from. And modern day Finns are of the Rus people after the Hyperboreans left sometime after the Ice Age, and I forget exactly how that leaving happened. But one way or the other, the point is that there's the interesting two-tier connection of humanity, because white people are legitimately a younger race in the world, as far as the original seed line, whether they still have potency or not. And then you've got the tropical races. And so we had a slightly different developmental curve. We don't have the same shared history. We're a newer history that's a little bit closer to how things were told from the Great North, whether you believe the Great North was the center of all civilization in the Great Beginning or not, right? And so those are the migratory patterns that effectively they go into Carpathia, and then that's where, from the Carpathian forest, that's where all the three of these races split. So
that's very interesting, because there's one thing I want to say about Ragnar, and I just want to add this, and then I'll be quiet. There's Varet Ragnar, who is actually a deity in this place, this Oxus place, which is equivalent to Indra, and they reckon that Indra is a change of this Varet Ragnar. You see that Ragnar?
Interesting.
Varet Ragnar was one of the original deities worshipped by these Oxus people. This is 5000 BC plus, right? According to our so-called, dates. And so it's just really interesting to throw that in there. I think this Varet Ragnar is connected to the Ragnar you're talking about, which comes from 10, 20, 30,000 years back. But please carry on, brothers.
No, it's it also kind of gives credit to the like west to east migration, because there are theories that what we know as the tribe of Dan from Ireland and from Irish mythology, that eventually they kind of like become the tribe of David from Israel, because all like different tribes and all of that, and like I'm thinking maybe the this step, like what we now recognize as like the Indo-Iranian, Indo-European step, like maybe that was the convergence point, maybe that was like the center of where everything and everyone came together, because like especially Turkey and Syria, I mean Turkey as a country alone, half of it is European, half of it is Asian, so it is the border between east and west. So if you go a little further, it's when you get into the center of it all, and that's why there is still kind of that discussion going, like are countries like Kazakhstan and Georgia and all the former what is it, communist countries, but like south east of Russia. Oh god, here we go with the placenta. Like are they European countries, or are they more Asiatic countries? It's still there's still a discussion going on. I believe that European Georgia, by the way, recently joined the European Union, and everyone, like at least here in Western Europe, is kind of asking themselves, but are they Europe though? Like they're so disconnected from the rest of us. They're more Russian, Asiatic. So it's just interesting idea, since we have all those migration patterns, and I'm definitely a big believer in multiple cradles. So who knows, maybe Bok Saga, there is truth to it. That also got me thinking, like the Bok Saga, what I know about it, which is very little, all the letters and numbers are all written together, like the one flows into the other. That is still how we are taught to write. Like one letter flows over into the other.
we don't take
Yes.
cursive script very seriously anymore after we learn it in school, other than to perhaps sign your name because you can just right, and cares if it just looks like chicken scratch. The point is that it's your kind of just your markings that just kind of are authentic. And hold on a second, I gotta sneeze. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Power Mukti-san.
Do not bless me. Thank you.
Lakshmi Devi.
Thou art blessed, my child.
That's what you get for sneezing in front of a bunch of shamans.
Well, here, listen, I'm just talking about the word bless. I'm all good with the energy that you actually mean. But anyway, yeah, the placenta, just talking about it a second ago, it was making me think, all right, I don't know if there's anything in the Box Saga that confirms this yet. We'll see if I find it. But now I'm thinking to myself, okay, in the Box Saga, the whole royal family lives in a castle on an island in the middle of a lake. The lake is the placenta. The lake, the moat surrounding this castle, because this is where the source of the whole breeding program. This is where the bed chambers are. This is where they're doing their thing, right?
So, would that make the castle the umbilical cord?
I suppose well, there isn't.
I think the plumbing for the castle that removes the waste away from the civilization would be the umbilical cord.
Well, actually, I think everything was done by boat. I think that the boats would be going in and out.
The spiral staircases could be representation of, the strands of DNA, perhaps.
Yeah. This would make the whole castle kind of an effigy of the new baby, the baby in development. A very Berkana runic energy.
Yeah, man. I got a whole bunch of notes from this conversation. I want to reach back as far as when we mentioned trust the seance. And I want to put the Slick Dissident stamp on that, by the way. That's from yours truly. And it just recently was broadcasted on the Higher Side Chats by our brother Juan. Give thanks and praise. I'm so proud of that man. So the trust the science kind of comes from considering the hypocrisy in the spelling of the word science. I before E except after C. Well, in the word science, it is after the word C, but they're still breaking the rules of language to spell science the way they spell it. And so in that, there's a message of do as we say, not as we do. And also, I want to substantiate the trust the seance is really what is going on in that phrase, because science is predicting future outcomes based on the body corpus of men of renown to predict future outcomes. And so when we look back, when I give you, it's going to take you 15 minutes to get across the city, considering traffic. Well, the reason I can say that and you can trust me to have a good formula is because I've evoked Albert Einstein's E equals MC squared to predict your velocity through traffic. And so I actually am calling on a dead man of renown, and I'm actually bringing forward his greatest accomplishment and using it as a formula, simplified, considerably simplified, beautiful, formulaic arrangement so I can predict future outcomes. So in the finest of ways, we have lost appreciation for how science is necromancy. Science advances one death at a time. And every man who has died in the chain of causality that we call science is still here helping us along. And also, I want to mention, we were talking about spelling and like you were talking about putting this letter before that letter in the causality of the phonetics that we call the alphabet and communication with letters. I want to point at the Socrates dialogue with Aeon. And in Socrates' dialogue with Aeon, he talks about this great chain of inspiration, that all of the great epic poets are considered a link in that chain. And a performer on earth is standing under their favorite poet's chain, the link of their favorite poet. And they have a chain going up and connecting to that poet up in the sky. And as he's describing this, it's a beautiful poetic paradigm to describe how inspiration works. But I just want to project the possibility that this is Socrates teaching a hip hop artist how letters work. And the chain of causality is really this paradigm of A is at the beginning and Z is at the end. And this is where we organize the letters to form written concepts and send our ideas into the world. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that. And then also somebody mentioned cursive writing, and how cursive writing flows one letter into the next. And I'm not dogging anything. I'm not casting judgment. I just want to assert the possibility that cursive writing actually makes it less likely for people to do the anagrams. If the letters are bound to each other in a certain order, then we are less likely to break them up. It feels more like a transgression to break the letters up and rearrange the words. And so the curse of Eve goes back to her heel will bruise his head and his head will bruise her heel. They say the word bruise twice. Well, the word bruise is an anagram for the rebus. The rebus is the word puzzles. And I think humanity has been cursed with not being able to project their will into the language and pull out deeper meanings that are being conveyed into the subconscious. And everybody should study the rebus. A rebus is a word puzzle. It's basically what Slick Dissident does when he invents new phrases like trust the seance. That was a rebus that I broke free and launched into the world, and it just got broadcast on Higher Side Chats. Give thanks and praise.
Yeah, man. Trust the seance. I like that. It's just one of the classics. And I think like what you guys have been talking about is really so like electric, especially as it comes back to sort of like you science. So who were the Scythians? So we track them, like you say, in Mediterranean. But I think that there's been new evidence of tracking DNA and tracking particular old writings that go back to the Iran. So like everything seems to go back to that place where the Indo-Europeans were settling. And so it goes back to the Caucasus, this mountain range of the Caucasus, where the Caucasians came from, the people with the blonde hair and the blue eyes and the red hair. And Scotland, I think, like Scotland and the UK, for example, this is very interesting. Did you know that a high percentage of all of the men in England, the United Kingdom, actually, the whole of the UK, their DNA aligns with the mummies that have been tested from ancient Egypt?
Ancient Egypt,
And
China.
This is from the Iranian as well?
They found red-haired mummies in China.
Yeah. I want to point out one of the most recent depictions of the Pharaoh of Egypt. He looks way too much like Aleister Crowley from my comfort zone. Way too much like Crowley. Just like Winston Churchill is looking like Crowley. And so is Trisymachus, the godfather of steganography. We just did a live stream on my channel, and we pull up the godfather of steganography, and he's got a carving of his face, and he's looking like Crowley, Churchill, and the depictions of the pharaoh in Egypt. And I just want to put that on people's radar, that all of these scientific discoveries, you got to keep your eyes out, because Aleister Crowley is popping up, or at least his bloodline is popping up here, there, and everywhere.
As does Barbara Bush, right?
Bingo, bango.
Well, yeah. Barbara Bush may be that bastard child because of Barbara's mother being allegedly one of one of her priests, one of Crowley's priestesses in his sex magic cult.
And Crowley got around. You know, he doesn't care as long as
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
But speaking of holes and holes, he didn't care what the hole, as long as the pole fit.
Right. You know, it's
Yeah.
super profound looking back in hindsight to realize that he was a sex magician, and he managed in time to graft his genetics onto the Plantagenet bloodline. The Plantagenet bloodline is basically the American version of Constantine's prize. Over in Europe, if you can prove every so many years, they have a Constantine's prize, and it's basically who can plagiarize your genetics into most closely to Constantine. It's a competition of fraud, you know, but we're talking about it like it's actual genetic science. It's just paperwork. Well, over in America, we do the same thing, but we call it elections. And every election is only won by whoever's genetics is closer to the plant of Genesis, the Plantagenet. That is what the 322 of the Skull and Bones is pointing at, the line that talks about the tree in Genesis that Adam and Eve did not gain access to, the tree of life, not the tree of knowledge. It's that other tree. And Crowley grafted his genetics into the Plantagenet bloodline. That is the highest sex magics there is. And you got to respect that. You don't got to love the guy, but you got to respect it.
That's true. I mean, if his bloodline in, you know, one way or another still lives on today, I mean, yeah, you got to respect that. I mean, that's what every man wants for his, you know, his bloodline at the very least, you know, preferably name as well, but at least his bloodline to go on forever.
His intention.
Look at the damage he did.
I mean, yeah, that too.
Christianity.
That too.
Well, 9/11.
He did leave a legacy, you know. I mean, it's not a great one. It's not a fantastic one. It's not one to, you know, necessarily brag about. But he did leave one. We are still talking about it in 2025.
We need more answers. When it comes to Crowley, I think one of the most important things we need are the answers to what was his fucking orders when he was a asset of MI5, right? Like the MI5 and the Ivy League school aspects of his life, who his parents came from, are the things that put him into the suspicion game. If you ignore those things, you're ignoring a whole lot of things, you know, because he was this close to more nefarious British shadow powers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he ends up being this asset, right? And perhaps he just is just a good British subject, right? And so there's a lot of good American citizens out there who have some clout for our ears. Sometimes we get that out of people, at least in history, if you wouldn't agree that there are any now, right? So knowing that, combined with the fact that he was doing damage by being chaos, it's just like I think he saw the world under this kind of duress, and he was at a certain level of consciousness and probably was the only one in his fucking world. He had to do it with no guidance whatsoever, right? You know, I've been a lot like that. You know, terrifies you when you've finally come to the point where you've fully developed your personality and your sense of morality, and you're willing to be out in the world, right? And being just a wild person who people paid attention to is largely the thing that drove just the interest in him as a brand, and thus people bought his books, and he became an established publisher of his magical ideas about things, right? Yeah. Ultimately, those are the things that Aleister Crowley did, and some of it was a horrible influence on the world. I hate him the most for putting Choronzon 333 into our consciousness, because that's part of what we have been dealing with the mental deterioration of our country at this phase in the true Aeon of Horus, which is part of the age of Aquarius, but not under his rules. And I don't like it when people allow a sloganeer to own a slogan as basic as Aeon of Horus. People need to use the word Aeon of and talk about the god Horus a lot in context to each other from where he got it from, right? So
I want to point.
This is why I use the Phil Fott, aka the swastika, the way that I do all over my channel. Why? Because fuck you, I'm not a Nazi. Look at the love I actually put into this.
Yeah, buddy. I want to point out that the Socrates dialogue that I was talking about earlier is the dialogue of the Aeon, which is and it was because of that term that I had to go and read that dialogue, which I highly recommend. And also, you mentioned all the universities, and I have found quite a few university symbols in his tarot deck. This is a Yule goat, which is harder and harder to find on the internet. They're scrubbing this stuff they're putting it into obscurity. They're burying it deeply. This is the it's an Elihu goat is the type of goat. This is an Elihu goat. Right. And Elihu is the namesake of Yale University. And so Elihu Yale is the namesake of the school of Scholastica. But Scholastica, all of the universities, according to the Greeks, are built on top of gymnasia. I'm skitzing. Sorry there, guys. Yeah. So Socrates was the forefather of academia, but he built the first academy in Greece was built on top of the foundation of a gymnasia. And so these dudes wrestling around and doing gymnastics in the bottom, that's the foundation. The fundamental understanding to build Ariste requires geometry in action, which we call gymnastics, and a love of music. Those are the two foundations. And I think that's a lot of what's being displayed in here. But just to take it further, this card is encoded deeply into Stanford University. I have a really random book that I acquired that when I picked up the book, I was like, I don't know why I want this book. And it was like 4 or 5 years later, I'm like, damn, I'm glad I had that book. It's all the ancient blueprints and layouts of Stanford. And so Stanford University's entire front facade is encoded into this card over here. And this is card number 12 reduces to a 3. This is card number 15 reduces to a 6. We got a sacred 36 360-degree circle. And these are holding down the corners in my Enneagram as well. These two cards are dynamically integral to one another in a balancing kind of fashion. So I just wanted to share some of those threads because you're mentioning Crowley and the university. And then I also want to mention that, he was chased out of the United States with the original Espionage Act. The old school Espionage Act was the fire under his ass that made him have to jump out and take off. Yeah. And that Espionage Act is just grown like a homunculus.
And Crowley would not have known the Bach Saga because the Bach Saga was not permitted to be released until like the mid 80s. And that devil card it has pretty much all the appropriate symbolism in it for the breeding program of the Bach, the way that works. And, gymnasium, well, that's effectively applied yoga, right? It's doing stuff with your body that's going to require it to stretch in certain ways. And that is really, really, really good for your sex drive, increasing fertility, especially for the women. And guys are, the homosexuality that they are effeminating men with the way that they have male yoga, right? It's hard for guys to find like a neutral, like masculine yoga guy that doesn't fucking annoy them, right? Some of them kind of do it, but there's too much new age. You know, I may one day make an entire like Norse themed yoga flow, but I'm not there yet, especially because I haven't figured out what that flow goes through and what I'm going to call every single move, as I need to up my Old Norse acumen to make sure I've got the heart and soul of it.
I mean, there is runic yoga. You can take that and make it your own.
Runic yoga. What I've seen from runic yoga is more of like runic qigong, where you're kind of taking the energy postures, but that's just for the energy. I'm talking about like, let's get limber about things, right? And so downward dog is maybe going to be something about, you know, Fenris or something like that, right?
Wow.
This is my point, right? You're showing, you know, instead of just confusing people with Sanskrit, you know, your posture is showing you something, right? Like, why would something be Fenris? Because the mythos of this yoga, this flow state you're going through is a living mythology. You're going through postures of something you're doing, like wrestling your demons. And this is Tyr getting Fenris back on the leash, that kind of thing.
And then like headstand or handstand poses be, you know, like Odinic, for example, you know, him hanging on the tree. That's an interesting one.
Yeah,
we
buddy.
could totally develop that.
Precisely.
The dog star, the pose of Sirius, the plow, the pose of the plow, there's the pose where you go like a cat, Leo.
Right.
They're all astrological. They're astrotheological alignments of the body.
Yeah, but what, you know, boat pose, right? You're getting that burn on your midsection. I mean, maybe that's Nagelfar. All right, Nagelfar. Ugh, hold it. They're scratching at your belly. Fingernails. Oh god. Right. See how that works? That's men that don't want to be effeminized by yoga because they're right on an instinctual level. They need more shit from, you know, people that are going to break tradition, right? It's just like, you know, and you can honor the tradition, but you're doing your own thing with your own practice, right? It's the only way any of us are going to move forward as friends and colleagues in the age of Aquarius, especially if we're in our fields as such, you know? So
not like now I'm thinking, what would be the Loki pose? Like, Loki is a trickster. He's a sly bastard.
No,
man, I think
Loki is not part of the flow other than when you make a mistake. If you slip, you know, like let's say you're doing crow. There's one called crow pose, right? So say we're in Hugin or Moonin, whatever way we're doing this crow pose thing, right?
Sure.
And you lose your balance and you fall on your face. That's Loki.
Or if you fart when you're in a backwards arch, that's Loki.
yes. Or when you fart, you have to hold your posture. You have to find a moment to say "excuse me" while holding your posture, so on and so forth.
Guys, let's start developing this. There's promise in this, and Howard already like came with a fun name, yogic Odinism.
Ooh, man, doesn't that sound powerful?
That sounds awesome.
My cherry wants to see the Loki pause.
That she does.
My cherry's ready. She's ready for us. But I think this is an interesting.
Have you ever been mounted by a horse?
I mean, we'll leave that for the like that's the X-rated part of it that that we don't talk about.
What we don't talk about. I am half Roman, you know.
Yeah, true.
The horses are actually central to the original peoples. There's this piece of writing which is about a horse manual that was found in Iran, and no, it was found in Syria, and it's basically this Indo-European proto-language, very early, very old. And it's very similar to Sanskrit, but they reckon because it's got a lot of similarities to Farsi that it must be from the Indus Valley region, where they had a different culture called the Anapan culture, which they haven't been able to decipher a language, but they reckon it's very close to the Persian language, which is Farsi. Very interesting. And I think this brings to a point of like what I know about the Scythians was they were the Maguses. So they were the blue-eyed, blonde-haired, white eyes. So even the story of Odin, he was a magus, right? He was a magician. He was a powerful. He was a shaman, a magician. He had these powers, and I think that this is sort of an interesting point where the Scythians had all of the knowledge base of what became Zoroastrian magic, and what was before Zoroastrian. You know, there was an Iranian school of thought philosophy, and this comes obviously from the ancient tradition of what we were talking about, the god names that are found in both the East and the West, so to speak of. And we see it like the first worship in India, the earliest worship we can find is basically Zeus, right? The word Zeus comes from it. The word Jupiter, Deus Pitta, is Zeus Pitta. Zeus, Jupiter, it's all coming from the same roots. And if we go back, then we see Zeusundra from the Sumerian tablets, right? So Zeusundra, we see this name that keeps coming up, and it relates to obviously having understanding. And I think this is where magic branches off from shamanism, because magic is based upon having understanding of the natural laws and manipulating the laws in such a way that we invoke a particular response from ourselves. We invoke a particular shift of consciousness that's going to cause a equal, relevant vibrational shift in matter that will produce the cause and the effect that we're looking for to drive a series of chain events to get the results that we hope to achieve. Shamanism is very different because it's not any invocation involved, it's evocation. It's more like, I don't want to do this. Shicks. I'm tapping out. Hey, someone else, can you please come and give me a hand? Yeah, like this is like I'm just gonna go along for the ride, and you guys are gonna come in here and like get it on, right? And so there's that which is why I think it comes from an older tradition. It's a very feminine thing to do, right?
I was just gonna say that.
Surrender.
Yeah.
Surrender and let that presence come in and do what it needs to do. Where the masculine thing is like, we need to be in control, dude. Like, I'm on top. It's a male thing, right?
Well, it's funny.
Right.
Like,
this thing goes up for a reason, you know? And so we have this control dilemma with men more often. And I suppose it's what creates a lot of the friction between men and women, right? Because we want to like often control the woman, and the woman, like, they just want to be, man. They don't want to be controlled. They just want to let things flow the way they're meant to flow. And so the whole idea of shamanism, I think, it comes from an epoch before all of these modern magics. So like Aleister Crowley, these are all Scythian ideas of I can control matter. I can push nature into a block. I can dominate nature. Where I think in a previous epoch, we were like, hey, let nature work through me. Nature's got the answers. And so that's, I think, what the distinction between shamanic practice and magical occult practice is, that difference between invocation and evocation, where the evocation is something which is unpredictable. And so like when I work, I'm not doing a magic spell. I'm doing the opposite. I'm just like going like, you know what? I have trust and faith that like the right thing's going to happen here, make it happen. And I'll just keep doing what I do with the rhythm to get me into the right mood when it just happens. And when it happens, it's done. You know?
And it's so funny that like we're now living in a like a society, you know, like especially, you know, the red pill community, for example. It's so focused on, you know, this fucking hyper masculinity, and any sign of emotion is feminine, and you know that's not okay. You know, man only. You know, just rage and horny. That's all you're, you know, allowed to feel. While at the same time, Odin, fucking Wotan himself, learned the female magic. He had to learn feminine magic, to be whole, to become who he is. Because feminine magic is incredibly strong magic. So if even the All Father himself had to be taught feminine magic and got ridiculed for it, I may add, to become what he is now, then what's wrong with like being more in touch with your feminine, drawing more inwards? It's not a bad thing. It's self-preservation as well. Because
Yeah, man.
especially us men, we're always so outward. Everything's outward. Like even when we're picking a fight, it's outwards to just fucking forward.
Well, the thing that is troublesome is that we've got our the levels of taboo that we are dealing with involve asking us to go to a place that may be a complete like negative experience just to try to go through it, because we got too many people that don't know about these little spiritual nuances and let it kind of go nuts on them to satiate a problem that they might think has something to do with the gender that they are, when just that it's shaped a bit by the gender that you are, but it's not trying to imply that you're in the wrong physiological condition, right? And so what I'm basically trying to say is like I've typically used yin and yang as my like default kind of way of explaining what I'm getting at, is that there is a principle of energy by which the feminine force is built upon, right? And that energy co-shares space between both genders, but it will sit in the inferiority in whichever is your physiological manifestation, right? It is not to be ignored. It is to be always there and integrated. Your shadow is going to be deeply connected to it. It's where Jung was articulating the anima and the animus, right? It is the aspect of the psyche that is connected to your yin for men or your yang for women, because all of us have an admixture of one or the other, and the androgynes and the hermaphrodites exist for having authentic physiological psychic centered phenomenon of being way more in the middle of this grid work. And so guys, if you know what you're doing, relax. You're not going to have these creepy little private moments where you feel like a woman, like in the manner in which you feel like you're being possessed by a gay demon. No, like, guys, relax. It's natural that weird thought fucking arises, and it's natural that you feel that way about it, but that's not what's fucking happening.
It's
none of these are to be your fucking personality. They're just good practices.
That's why I call it guy dance. Guy dance. And this is vulnerability, healthy vulnerability, and allowing the inspiration to move through you big time. Yeah. And I want to point out how the term red pill has gone way off from its original incarnation. So many people have lost track of where the red pill, because as soon as it was born, people just jumped on it with presumption and turned it into left versus right political bullshit. The Red Pill is a documentary directed by Cassiejay, Cassiejay. And it's a woman who wanted to infiltrate into the men's rights movement to discredit them. And when I entered into watching this documentary, I was like her. I believed that the term men's rights was a redundancy. I didn't think that there was any need to throttle this cause. So she infiltrates the men's rights movement. She starts going to their meetups, and she starts seeing these men coming together to support one another and share their vulnerability. And as she witnesses them in their vulnerableness, she resonates to realize, wait a second, the male privilege lie is keeping all of us down because we are all fucked in incredibly nuanced ways. We're all fucked in incredibly nuanced ways. And the problem is that everybody's fucked in a different way. And we're just not sharing each other's vulnerability about it. And so she realizes, yeah, we're chopping these dicks on the first week that they're in the world. And then we're getting mad at men when they get angry because hurt people hurt people. And so my cause that I've actually transcended the red pill that she indoctrinated me into, I've taken it past the men's rights movements, and I'm on about intactivism. I am all about intactivism. We got to stop chopping baby dicks, because then we project hate when men become angry, but anger and hate are not the same thing.
You get the testimony of any well-hygienic person who is uncircumcised. They will tell you that all of the things they say is a goddamn fucking myth.
Interesting point. I think it has to do with fear. I think it's a kind of a it takes away an important protection for our penis physically, right? Because that skin is there for a reason. It's there to protect you. If you're walking through the bushes, right, and you got a foreskin, you're going to be a lot damn happier than if you don't. I'll tell you that much. So, and here's an interesting point. The word "guy" in Sanskrit means cow.
Oh wow!
Holy cow!
Holy
new perspective,
cow!
Right? The guy dance. Hey, baby.
Yeah, buddy.
And dancing is all about getting in tune with your feminine. Like any fighter, if you go to any like martial arts, it's like the first thing you got to learn as a man is get in tune with your feminine, baby. Learn to move like a woman. It's like otherwise you're stuck in that like, you know.
Right. Yeah. I think of it as attracting the feminine, becoming the magnet that she can envision her place within. You know what I mean?
That sounds so naughty.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. You know what? I want to announce to everybody, happy 8th day of Navaratri. Today is Mahagauri's day, and she is the 8th Devi, and she corresponds beautifully with the muse of dance, Terpsichore. She's one of my favorites. Number 8. There's a lot of adrenaline integral to this performance. And also the moon has just passed Mars just over the night. And so it's very powerful alignments.
Is April 6th always this muse's day?
No, this Navaratri dances in a way that is very hard to keep track of. I'm trying to syncopate. I'm trying to find its vibe, but it's not solar. I'll say that it is not solar.
Well, this is one of the years where I get to enjoy her.
Yeah,
but we don't know what day it is.
But it's very interesting that you say that, because my Mars and my Mars and my moon are in conjunction.
You don't know what day it is, do you?
What day is today?
No, but
what are you talking
constellation is talking to me today. It's in my horoscope. My moon and my Mars are like this. And
this is
my moon
solar return.
What is it?
Sorry?
This is my 45th solar return.
Oh my God!
This is your birthday today. I was gonna ask you this. Happy birthday, dude. I don't know why I didn't ask earlier. I didn't get a chance. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday,
mighty Sarah. Happy
birthday to you. Hip hip. Hooray.
Hey.
Dude, what a sacred day. You didn't mention this before, huh? You kept that like under the hat, huh?
Okay, I found this piece of paper that my friend had given me, so I don't know where I could find it on a website to make it clearer. But she had found this history of circumcision. Now, I think some sources have told me that there's 1 or 2 dates that are wrong, but circumcision actually is a progressed. There's a banana here that's been cut for demonstration.
Yeah, they chop it more and more over time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So get this, because like just looking at the original version gives you the whole point about it on a ritual level, because it heals back. Like it's a nothing. It's a once procedure, and then it heals because it's just like a little jab, right? Before around 500 BC, the original circumcision ceremony amongst the Hebrews, known as Brit Milah, literally translates to the covenant of the word.
Covenant with the bull.
Covenant of the word is what it says on this. Maybe if it's the bull, I'd imagine that makes sense too. So
I just didn't hear.
Yeah, I want to point out. I want to point out how the penal system is encoded into our language very deeply.
Yeah,
when they dictate your behavior, it is because we have been programmed to syncopate actually to Mars. Mars is the planet with the giant gash in it. And so I think the masculine is fully harmonized to the Martian struggle. And Mars behaves very uniquely to all the other planets. But go ahead. I'm sorry, Zarelath. I'm listening.
No. Yeah, I think that Mars was not the god of war before its own cataclysm, right? The Mars energy was a different expression of the will force that was not violent. So anyway,
that which leads to an active, that which makes active, that which activates, that which causes us to move and change. And so you see Scorpio is the beginning of activity, the beginning of transformation, and Aries then becomes the head that moves forward, taking that active change. So whenever you're transforming or transmutation, dealing with that energy, you're dealing with Mars in a sense, because Mars is the truck that's going to drive that through the wall.
Indeed.
And it's all about discipline. It's about martial application.
All this talk of the scar PO, I got to go to the bathroom, but I'm listening to Zarelath. Okay. Please do share.
Okay. So let me screw back. So it's called it's the Hebrew know it as the Brit Milah, literally translating to the covenant of the word. Consists of a ritualistic nick to the penis of the foreskin of an infant to draw a single drop of blood. So it's nothing more than a blot, right? It's a bloodletting. No incisions are made. No body tissue is removed. It's just for blood.
That's interesting.
The glass is left, and the glass is left unexposed. This small nick heals, and no damage is left to the penis. This is the original Abrahamic covenant as he had performed on himself and his children, Isaac, Ishmael, and their progeny. So that's the original thing, right? So they would get a drop of blood out of it, and then this is a vampire's practice, because what this is not.
Do you know what it reminds me of?
What's that?
Do you know what it reminds me of? The Mayan practice of bloodletting from our penises. They used to have special obsidian tools, and they used to do bloodletting on the penis in order to use it for ritual magic. Very interesting.
The connections between Egyptian civilization and Mesoamerican civilization are so astronomically astounding that it blows my effing mind. And there may be some Sumerian connections that are wilder than all that as well. But I was going to say, we know that in Islamic tradition, a baby boy, all the women kiss the baby boy's penis. I think that this is because these guys doing this kind of thing, which should never be done. Blood intent rituals, you do yourself, right? You cut yourself to bleed for an effect on yourself. That's the only white magic way of doing bloodletting, in my opinion. Right?
Yeah. Can you elucidate on the timeline of how it became increasingly into
Yes.
a flesh offering, and then an entire organ is removed that depletes the orgasm by 10 times? It depletes the male orgasm by 10 times. I can't even imagine having an orgasm that is 10 times what it already is. And I can't imagine what the world would be like if all the men were having 10 times the orgasm. Vulnerability,
right?
it's
So
the key.
the next, so this next article, the next article is a little bit longer than the first, and then the last one's even longer than that. And so this does explain, because it does go, next step is the flesh offering. So, okay, so that's, so that's before 500. So now after 500 and the destruction of the temple is what they're marking this as. And I think this is the date that's in contention. Shortly after the destruction of the first temple in Jerusalem in 587 BC, a change was made in the Brit ceremony, or Brist. Well, no, it does say, it says Brit.
I want to point, I want to point out how British Island sounds so much like Brit Mila, and the British Islands. It's basically the same damn word.
And I am North English Norman, right? That's what a Purdy is a North English Norman. So anyway, okay, was a change made in Britain in order to make a clear visual mark on the foreskin that the man is part of the covenant with God. The foreskin extending beyond the covering of the glands was cut off. This is the best part of the foreskin removed, yet the Jews kept most of their foreskin, and the glands were kept covered and unexposed. Restoring the tip was easy, and many Jews practiced restoration in order to obliterate their Jewish identity. Small weights were used, and this is somewhat described in the book of Maccabees. Restoring allowed the Jews to escape Judaism and enter the Roman world, avoid head taxes. There's something called head taxes in Rome. I guess we're talking about the lower head. Hey, your helmet is showing. Hey, put your helmet away, boy. Right.
This attaches to the Stamp Act and the Impression Act, where they were taxing, and if you read it, for every skin administered, used in the extended territories, for every skin. That's for skin.
So the head tax that was imposed on Jews. So maybe the head tax is just a pun, but either way, that was because they were Jewish, not because they were circumcised. Other than in Rome, circumcised meant Jewish.
Yeah, those priests, they love their punishment. Their wee puns. They love their wee puns.
Yes. And you couldn't compete in Roman sports, and Jesus was circumcised as a baby this way.
Yep.
Right? Right. So remember, it's all about him being nailed to the cross with King of the Jews over his head. And for modesty's sake, in every church, we put a cloth over his genitals. That is not how they fucking hanged him. It was they were hanging his shame up, because that's all part and parcel of the complete and absolute abuse of the matter.
Right.
Butt naked, perhaps the hermaphrodite suspected by Hillman.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, I want to point at the fact that his hands are pinned as far removed from his genitals as possible. He's hands off. And so even if he wanted to, he couldn't even touch himself down there where he's vulnerable.
Right. Or hide his secret.
Yeah, the ultimate posture of vulnerability right there. Big time.
Right, exactly. And that is expressed in the Hanged Man card
Yep.
and in the Thoth Hangman card.
Yeah,
Granted,
buddy.
I just want to say something about how barbaric this is. My girlfriend, about 3 weeks ago, we were discussing this in depth because she is managing a resource for a center, which is a spiritual center, which is an international organization. And one of the people that's very much involved in this spiritual center happens to be a Jewish person. And this couple went to a circumcision. And basically, she described what happened. And my partner was horrified. She was like, "Oh my gosh!" So like, and she was trying to like use a bit of humor to help, diffuse the situation. She was saying, "So how did you feel about this?" And they were like, "Well, everybody was celebrating." So basically, this is what happens: they chop off a huge chunk of the foreskin. This poor child is screaming their head off. You know what they do? Newborn. They take a cloth and they dunk it into a glass of red wine and they squeeze it into the child's mouth. So not only are they getting this newborn physically molested and traumatized, when this poor child is like, they don't even have proper vision or hearing, or they don't know where they are.
This is
They're
newborn
just feeling
baby.
extreme pain, and then they're getting drunk as well. So I think there might be a spiritual element of possession because of spirits being put in, alcohol being introduced, because a new baby, you know how sensitive they are to booze.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's terrible. Like in a doctor's office, somebody had gotten out the audio for it. It's just like, imagine a newborn baby being circumcised like that, and you can hear a newborn's first fucking word, no. It mustered up no from its primordial essence. Nothies.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah, bro. I want to point at. Oh, I glitched out. Sorry there. So I want to point out a formula that I think we're looking at, Franklin, with what you were talking about, with her being witness to it and everybody's acting like it's all hunky dory. And this is a raw thought. I have more to expand on this, but I think that cognitive dissonance becomes a sacred artifact of a community. If enough people invest into the cognitive dissonance of a tradition or a rite of passage, I think it becomes more and more sacred because it's broken logos, because it's an excuse to escape from the reason that runs their life on the day-to-day. And now we're going to do something extremely unreasonable, but it's sanctified by the collective. And so I think cognitive dissonance becomes hierophilized. It becomes loved because it's an excuse to not be reasonable.
I haven't read The Prince, but isn't it from Machiavelli's The Prince? Is it better to be feared?
Your audio, brother.
Mine or Zerlat's?
Zerilat, your audio has gone really soft.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah, there you go.
I wasn't talking into the mic properly. Wasn't it Machiavelli's The Prince, which I haven't read, but I heard that that's where we get the thesis of, is it better to be loved or to be feared?
Yes. And quoting Machiavelli is dangerous because the actual quote always, when you go look it up, he's always doing some kind of he's kind of working in the oxymoronic. So if you misquote him, it comes out not the way he intended. He's very crafty that way. So I think the quote goes, if you cannot be both loved and feared, then it is best to be feared. And sometimes framing Machiavelli quotes, I find myself falling into a very easily misrepresenting what he's saying. But yes, you are correct. That is it. And I want to also, you mentioned Maccabees. I want to point at Maccabees because it's a very important missing book from some people's biblical insight. But also I want to point at not just the family of Maccabees from biblical times, but I want to point at Machiavelli and how the name Machiavelli in the family of the Maccabees are probably have a vast amount of consistency still today. And the Book of Maccabees is a big thing in the Mormon circles. That's why they got the bees on everything. You
the
got
bees
it.
for
You
the
got
Masons.
it. Right. Yep.
The hive.
They keep.
So,
Yeah.
well, yeah, Mac is what in Scottish? Son, right?
Son of
the bees. Yeah, it is. It's the workers. It's the workers of the queen.
son of a bees.
Son of a bee. Exactly. I got, I've been stung by a bee. I've got a bee itch.
Son of a bee itch. That's great. That is great.
Oh my God. I have the best, dude. Like, I almost have good relationship with freaking yellow jackets at this point. Like I've worked really hard to master that, because my backyard is kind of got a lot of like critters, and so there's plenty of places for the yellow jackets to have their underground hives. And
are those, what are the yellow jackets? Are those wasps?
No. These are they're basically the aggressive. They're aggressive territorial bees. They have a very where it's more of like an orangey yellow for like the regular kind of honeybee. These guys are very like bright, like yield sign yellow. Like just think of the yield sign, like that color of yellow. That's the yellow jacket, right? So it's
nature takes care.
They are a highly territorial bunch, but they're merely territorial. Like if it's kind of like dealing with like a venomous snake that they just have a fucking temperament, but they're not actually interested in you. They just have a territorial temperament. I mean, even my iguana gets a territorial temperament once in a while. He did succeed in biting me on the lip just recently.
First thing in the morning, right?
First thing.
So what you're saying is don't go and take a leak on their hive in the morning.
Yeah, don't take it. Go like, yeah, exactly. Right.
Because you'll end up with a son of a bitch.
Right. So there are protocols, because typically you're encountering them because you're walking over the part of the lawn or something, or the part of the pathway where they've dug a little hole in for themselves to live. Then you've got like regular bees and bumblebees. Those guys are chill as fuck. I can find any bee at any given time, and once it's landed somewhere, as long as I'm before he gets up to go, I can just smooth right in and give him a pet on the back, and they're just like, oh, hi, right, and that's it.
Nice.
Bumblebees, hold them in my hand. Perfectly friendly little dudes. Perfectly friendly. You just have to fucking act.
They're not hornets.
No, they're not hornets. Hornets are hornets, I think, are called dirty pollinators or something like that. It's like they have kind of like, they do maybe a little bit of pollinating, but I think they're kind of like a scavenger type or something. I'm not sure. Like, they don't have a clear function in my knowledge pool to their relationship with the ecosystem. I think they hunt other bugs.
We've got a lot of different kinds of bees here. We've got lots of indigenous bees here where I live, because Cape Town has got the most variety of wildflowers. We've got more wildflowers in the city than on the subcontinent of Australia, different types. So this is a wildflower community and rare, all different sorts of flowers. So like right here, we've got a bee, by my beach, we've got a little bee sanctuary. We walk through the bee sanctuary at my beach, and we've got like 5 different kinds of bees there. The traditional bees, not the honeybees, but we've got a lot of bees here in Cape Town, and we don't have those yellow jacket guys. We've got yellow bees, some bees that are quite bright and yellow, but I've never had a problem with bees. I've only had issues with wasps, and it's only when you piss them off because they don't forget.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you swat them away by accident, not realizing what they are, and you swapped me away, they'll come after you, and then they won't stop.
Yeah.
Hornets are like that too. Like if something goes past your face and you accidentally do that and you clap it and it goes like you, it's against the tree. You better move away because it's gonna come back and go, oh, is it on?
Yeah. It's kind of like they're like that asshole, like you're walking down the sidewalk or something like that, and he expects the whole fucking world to part for him, and you're not paying attention to his aura, and so you bump into him by accident because he was being rude, but you weren't doing what everyone else was doing, right? So that's his arrogance, and so now he's insulted, and it's unsure how you can resolve that without the answer of his pride being a fist, right? It's that situation with these things.
So I've had this conversation with people out west about which bee is which, and I think I might have mislearned the yellow jacket. I think some people, what I called the yellow jacket growing up, maybe other people would call it the bumblebee. And this is the largest of them all. Is that what you guys consider, that large one, that super big semi-truck?
That's bumblebee, not yellow jacket.
Okay, see,
those are the friendly ones.
Yes,
they can come and sit on your hand. They're so chilled.
Yes.
My son got stung by one only because it wasn't alive. I've never seen a living one sting you, but he was playing with one and it had just passed away, and it stung him, and he touched the back and it stung him. I said, they can't sting. And then I looked it up. I was like, bumblebees can sting. Interesting. I didn't know they could,
Maybe only on its death throes.
Well, yeah, no, I think, I think the bumblebee and the regular honeybee are like that, where they lose their stinger, right? So like it's a sacrifice. It's a one strike sacrifice. But this is why it's about the hive, right? Because that one sting activates pheromone, and then pheromone picks up in the etheric field of their scent, their way of smelling, and they're just like, shit, Charlie 108's down. Attack! The queen is under attack. Protect the flower bed, right? It's and it's war. It's just like it's Pearl Harbor, right? It's the Wu-Tang Clan,
right? In this kind of it doesn't need any support, but going back to the idea of the alphabet and the letters being in order, being the chain of inspiration. It is kind of fascinating that we have the spelling bee, and we know that these bees are collectivist. They're speaking on this frequency, this language, which is not just frequency and vibration, it's also movement. The bees communicate through dance and pheromone as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think that is kind of hails back to the idea of, from Socrates' conversation of the aeon and the chain of inspiration that we draw on from above.
And the bees are also a very, very popular symbol, or the beehive at least is a very popular symbol in Freemasonry, expressing the hive mind as well.
Telling everybody to beehive. You better beehive yourself.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah, that too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
there's a number. There's a number of mysteries and other occult traditions that are operating with it. So it's definitely a theme that is part of the substrate of the occult world, right? It's a truth that everybody has a certain fractal examination of, which is where you're asking yourself, what is the common ground other than the observation of the pattern, right? This is why I like to keep an eye out for things in patterns of 9 and ask myself, okay, what's the source of this 9 pattern? How do I correspond that to already my understanding of the single digit code. And, from this is I am building my relationship with the infrastructure of magic.
That's no in German. 9.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
That too. Yeah.
So we're talking about negative existence.
Jawohl.
Mm.
Jawohl.
Well,
Nagel.
here's the thing. That is 9 also 9, right? Like, how do you say the number 9 in German? Is it
Pretty much the same as in Dutch, negen.
Right. So it's negen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And in Dutch, it would be with a hard G, but still same.
Yeah, and
Right.
nine has a certain negentropic energy about it, as it is self-consumed, much like the snake eating its own tail. It dissolves in numerology. It's functionally also a 0. So when you add 4 to 9, you get 13. In numerology, you add the 1 and the 3 and you get the 4. It's like you didn't do anything. It's
Right.
like the 9 never happened. So it has a self-consumption.
the 9 is supposed to be the upper half of the double toroidal field, meeting with the 6.
Yeah,
The
buddy.
9 and the 6 merge. They also create the 8.
Here's an
Ooh,
interesting point.
yeah.
When you multiply 9 to anything, it becomes 9. Multiply 5 by 9, it becomes
Yeah.
9. Multiply 2 by 9, it becomes 9. Multiply 8 by 9, it becomes 9.
Yes.
So 9 is all about functional integrity.
There's
function-
something
and-
there's something about it, right? There's something about why the single digit code is up to 9 and then 0 as the implied 10th.
And
Mhm.
Howard in chat makes an interesting observation. Like 9 is also a death number. Like think of the Club of 27, for example.
Mhm.
How many great artists who had, the highest of highs, but experienced like the lowest of lows at the same time have, well, let's say made it till 27.
Yes. I consider the 27th letter of the alphabet to be ampersand. And if you study the history of ampersand, it's really a condensed phrase of and, per se, and. And I consider this number 27 on the alphabet, but I also I consider it the jug that Aquarius is pouring out. The ampersand is a container, a containment unit, like the Ghostbusters.
You see the way I look at the energy of numbers is that I'm still learning the deeper relationship. Each number has its own animistic kind of consciousness. They're they have there's an inherent trait to the number as a whole representative of value. It's why we have a sigil for 2 and we don't just use tally marks for counting, right? There's a form. That form is a tell on our understanding of whatever magician drew this sigil and standardized it across the world, gave us a certain understanding of the value of 2 via energy, and we accept it without question, right? And so I try not to think about the form of it as it is spelled. I only see if I can discover the correlation along the way of really trying to embrace the numbers conceptually, right? And so what is it to have an essence of 2-ness, and can I find an essence of 2-ness that is isolated from an essence of 1-ness or 3-ness or another multiplication thereof of 2-ness, right? And this is what I operate on when I meditate on the tarot, to give a place for the numerology to be part of the story that the Norns need me to tell.
I think it's very interesting when we look at numbers, because what I've noticed is that the number that we're dealing with carries the vibration of the number before it. So 8 is obviously Saturn. right? 8 has always been Saturn. 9 is always Mars. 1 is always the Sun. 2 is always the Moon. 3 is always Jupiter. 4 is always the North Node, also relates to Uranus. This is Vedic numerology. This is Vedic astrology. This is Western astrology. It doesn't matter which branch of astrology or numerology you look into, these numbers relate to these planets. And so when we look at 9, we're dealing with the power of Mars. And so Mars is about discipline. So look at the word discipline. Disc. It's a disc. It's a full disc. 9 is a full disc. Disc, apple, line. Discipline. So it's a disc applying line. You take a disc and you apply a line. What have you got? Disc. Apply a line. You got the number 9. So discipline is the number 9. Is the planet. Is obviously Mars is all about discipline. And what do we need discipline for? We need discipline when we want to transform. So Saturn is hard work. Saturn is 8, right? When you swallow the bitter things in life, when you swallow what you got to swallow, it's also about gaining weight, money, resources. Money is very close to the number 8, but the number 8 is about being a hard worker, is about being dedicated, is about sacrifice. So that hard work and sacrifice of number 8 then goes to the next octave of vibration in 9, where it becomes a wholehearted discipline, and one is now a disciple in a sense. And so 9 is the martial arts, the discipline required to practice martial arts it's a very 9 energy. And so 9 obviously relates to this Martian energy, which, as we were saying before, has got to do with Scorpio and Aries, because Scorpio is the feminine pole of Mars. Aries is the masculine pole of Mars. So any transformation has to start with the death card of the tarot. And once the death card of the tarot has got the wheel turning, it then has to mature itself in the emperor. The emperor is then, when that action is being set down in stone, the law is written in stone now, this is what's happening. So the transformation that starts with Scorpio, which is an inner process, becomes externalized in Aries. Hence, Scorpio is all about your sexual energy. It's all about your internal transformation of potential sexual energy relating to the possible to germinate, to generate, to create something new, a new offspring, sexuality. But that offspring, in order to actually find a way into the world, needs to do the full cycle of Mars, which involves Aries. So Aries then becomes the head, which is going to move forward with the butting of the head and the horns, which is basically claiming your space. Aries claims space. Aries is very direct energy.
Let me claim some space right here, Franklin. I got to say that I saw the new arrangement of the Enneagram that you and Indy were putting out. It was so fun. That was so fun. And I love that you went into the magical squares with it. But I just want to make a caveat here that my planets are decided. They're chosen. They're spoken for. I have found them in a different orientation than the way you're laying them out. And I love seeing you play around with these associations. But I just want to state that I see them differently, and I'm happy to entertain your rearranging of them. But the planetary associations in the Enneagram have served me where they are now. And I am compelled to rearrange them, but only in a very slight way, not in a vast and profound, all-encompassing alteration. And I'm going to make a video about that soon to explain my case. But yeah, my planetary associations with the numbers don't syncopate to the rearrangement I saw you putting forward. And that's all good. I think we should agree to disagree, especially on the day that Mars and the moon are dancing together.
No, absolutely. I didn't add anything new. I just took Vedic numerology. I took Kabbalistic numerology. I took Taoist numerology. I took Vedic astrology. I took Western astrology, and I just compounded them all and got the unified denominators, and just basically put the existing knowledge from the Chaldeans, which were the astrologers, into play. So I haven't created a new Enneagram. I've just taken the Chaldean astrology, numerology, and put it onto a system that we can see. I think that the other one is the new one, the one that was invented in the 1970s by the psychologists. I think that's the new Enneagram, which is really for like this time frame. But I've taken just the old the old. So what I've done is I've mapped the Kabbalah into this as well, which is sort of where these words come from. So like 9 is always about completion, obviously. So and Mars is about this powerful completing of, when you complete your cycle of the astrological sphere, you end up back at Mars, Aries. Aries begins the cycle where it ends.
I wanted to, because I've been sitting on some numerology that I was liking what you were saying about that, and I was thinking about.
Let me say something real quick, Zarelath.
Okay.
If Mars represents the circumcision, then it actually represents incompletion. It actually represents the first error, the first flaw, the first mistake. And so I put it in the number 1. And this is where we need to be driven, compelled, activated into making things better again. If you put Mars in the number 1, you are actually an activist against circumcision. So saying that Mars represents everything is fine and dandy, that's a pacifist position. You got to put Mars in the number 1. The scar on Mars is the gash on the soul of every circumcised child. You got to put Mars in the number 1.
Why does Mars represent circumcision? Who said that? I don't think it does.
Okay. This is.
I mean, like it's a part of it, but I think the circumcision is got to do with the disconnect. You showed a particular card earlier. And that card is really important if you want to decode the sigil of Saturn, which is made from the number block of Saturn, which is essentially taken from the Vedic numerology, which is the Vedic numerology is 9 blocks. And the 9 blocks of the Vedic numerology is how they write a horoscope. So if you get a Vedic horoscope, it's 9 blocks. It's a Saturn block. It's basically what we call the Saturn number square. Is a Vedic astrological chart, because Saturn is the key to it, because 8 carries the vibration that 9 will complete. Mm-hmm. And 8 is really fundamental to the entire structure because of Saturn's vibrational frequencies of the cube. And the black cube represents the etheric, represents the development of the etheric, which is going to project our body. So it sort of is that completing factor that is then carried into the next frequency by Mars. So what you say isn't necessarily wrong, Gabriel, because
right.
If you
That's
look at
the thing. Well, neither one of us are right. Neither one of us are wrong. It's just culturally important in different contexts. And I've got a question, Franklin. Were the Vedics circumcised back in the day?
There are so many cults within India, or different ones that have different practices, but it's not a normal thing, no.
Right. And
like
that
eating
might
human
be
flesh is some Indians eat human flesh.
Right. So that might be the paradigm. Like the Enneagram I see embedded into our culture and animated into predictive programming entrainment that we call entertainment is a circumcised culture's Enneagram. And you're coming from the old ways before they chopped dicks and saying this is the idealistic if everything was hunky-dory in the world. And so I think mine is accentuating the need for a reform, accentuating the need to stop chopping dicks, and putting the number one issue, the first trauma in the life of every circumcised man, I'm putting it as the top priority. Number one is Mars.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of shows a pathwork of kind of going from what Gabe has discovered, putting together, and almost wanting to transition it, to where it belongs, which may be that it belongs closer to where Bush has it placed now. I was thinking I was thinking about the numerology. So you said that it was 13, we're talking about death card, right? Death is 13, right? So you said that it starts with the death card, which then falls into the emperor. I think you said that, right? Was it death to emperor? Yeah. Yes. So that's interesting because emperor is 4. It's 13 reduces to 4, right? So numerologically that checks out. And this interesting idea about the 8 being Saturn, because usually up until I heard this, I typically am running with what the symbolism is telling me, which is that in tarot, 5 is Saturn, the Hierophant card, and there's a lot of Saturnian imagery that is implied in that card, right? So this could be an aspect of these things too, because this reconciliation of what Gabe's got and what you got is kind of part of the ideas of my agenda, which is biospherical regenesis, which is to restore the natural life and light affirming genesis of the universe.
Yeah, man.
That's very interesting as well, like to look at it like this. So you mentioned 5 being obviously related to that particular archetype, which is from now you've got a mystic, a mystical, and an actual. So that's very interesting. So the mystical, this is the mystical enneagram.
Right.
The actual enneagram is about something different. This is mystic. When you look at, for example, the tarot trump, number 5, the Chaldean or pre-Chaldean, which is Phoenician, actually, when you go into the Phoenician, you look at the Phoenician letter, which is related to that, is related to what the Paleo-Hebrew is calling Vav. The numerological association with the actual alphabetic letter is number 6. So that's the actual numeration of that archetype. However, the mystical nature of that 6 comes from 5, which is why the tarot, which is a much older form of communication because it's based purely upon hieroglyphics, is where the 6 birthed out of the 5. So you could apply that to the same thing, that like in a mystical sense, 9 is Mars, but 9 is 1 in actualization. So when you look at, for example, the magician card is number 1, right? However, when you look at the numerology of the alphabet as it relates to the Paleo-Hebrew, which became the Hebrew, which is essentially the Phoenician alphabet, if you look at them, they're the same thing. You're looking at number 1. So 1 becomes 2. And this is how these numbers are tethered. So in occult, we speak of a number and a mystic number. And the mystic number is always 1 number less. So if I'm dealing with the number 44 or 24, then I'm dealing with the mystic number 23,
Right.
for example.
It's the rule of Kal-El. That rule of Kal-El is so important.
Right.
Every time you're talking about a number, you're also implying its neighbors. Yeah.
It's all about, it's like when you have something like 10 is a cycle marker. That's what 10 represents. It means one time around, and then it goes to 11, and this is now your second time starting again, right? You know, so like I have now hit 45, right? So that's 5 times I have gone around, which reduces to 9, right? So I'm in a personal 9 year this point moving forward, right? And so that comes from completing the cycle, and then tomorrow I move into the 11, into that 11th hour.
Right. I want to point out how something I've learned by appreciating the Navaratri is, we talk about it in the context of days. Like this is the first day of Navaratri, and at 12 midnight, it will be the next day of Navaratri. But this is the blending of essences, like Franklin is saying. Because Navaratris are actually evening time celebrations, they kind of bleed into the next one. And so while we call it the day of this Devi, it's actually a nighttime celebration, which means it bridges into both. And so the rule of Kal-El, that's why it's so important, the +1 -1.
Yeah, it's interesting being at that cycle in your life as well, 45. It's a powerful I think it's a powerful year of change. because it's sort of like, if you think about it, right? Before then, we've got 36, which is where we're like fully adult. That's where our bone structure has developed. So between the ages of 30 and 36, our bones get more solid. You obviously felt your bones get more hard, right? Up until like 36. And by that stage, your bones become thicker and more heavy set. But before that, then you're 25. 25 is where you're like fully adult, mentally, emotionally. You've developed that level of emotional capacity. But when you go back beyond that, you're 16. Oh my gosh, what happens when we're 16 when we're boys, huh? You can't put that damn thing away, think back like like a little pervert, basically.
It's really supposed to be about 30 or so that you actually hit like actual adult mind.
That's when you actually have game. That's when you actually have game.
Yeah. There's a reason why Jesus was 30 when he started his ministry. It's they bake this into the mystery.
And it's also the reason why Leonardo DiCaprio like only dates under 27.
Oh, that guy.
Or even younger, I believe.
Give Jared Leto a little bit of credit.
Oh, Jesus. He
does
fucking
that
cult.
just because he can, I think.
I mean, he's Leo DiCaprio,
I think he's absolving a lot of us from some of our guilty thoughts. As long as Leonardo goes all the way to 27, then I'm good at 30. I'm good. At least I'm not Leonardo. He's just setting a dark standard for us.
Hey, listen, just like when we're seeing when we're talking about Abraham's wife in the Bible, what's the excuse? That was a different time. It was a different time.
We were on the break.
Yeah, we were something, right?
Seriously, coming with the Ross Rachel, we were on a break.
Totally.
Fucking, he's your
It's like when I think of sacrifice, I think of the number 8, and then the 8 becomes the 9. You see how this is working between our ideas, and because. Like the first sacrifices were done for Saturn, always, I think, if we go back. It all goes back to Saturn, Saturnial thought. And like originally, and then at some point it became sacrifice also for the bull, didn't it? Mm-hmm. That was in the age of Taurus. But I think when we go right back, sacrifice was done so that we can get the ground to grow, soil, food. And so that is the reaper. And so Saturn represents in the green man in the old times, that sky is actually for reaping corn and wheat and grains. So Saturn traditionally was a deity related to reaping of food. And that's why I ate something. I ate food, right? Mm-hmm. I ate today food, grain, Saturn, eating. So to this day, our words sort of encapsulate these ideas of the notion of that sacrifice that would be made. And traditionally, we spoke about this before. In the Mayan tradition, they had an obsidian blade that they would slice their penises with, right? And bleed on the soil. And there were Celtic kings that used to like put their stone, on the stone of destiny, and sort of impale themselves on their sword in order to bleed on the soil. And I think, if you go back, the goats were a big part of the sacrificial tradition as well. Right.
I just want to point out that you don't have to cut women to get their blood. They just need it to go somewhere. It just naturally, they contribute 10,000 times more than we do in their lifetime than our little tiny drop at the beginning of our life. Big respect to the ladies out there. Big respect.
And like also speaking of slicing stuff down there, it was that's a fun fucking topic. A bunch of men here talking about slicing and dicing. Hey.
Yeah, man. Mars is right over the moon right now, y'all.
Oh, I'm so over the moon with this topic. But it was you know, like back in the Middle Ages, when people took the teachings of Christ in like a whole weird way, because Christ basically said, you know, whatever is you know, causing you to sin, or whatever is, you know, tempting you to sin, you know, cut it off, cut it out. You know, if your eyes are wandering and, you know, causing you to sin, to have lust for another, you know, cut your eyes out. I mean, I don't think he meant it literally, but, you know, a lot of monks started to take it literally, and, well, quite voluntarily making themselves into eunuchs. So yeah, that was hella fun, you know, and that's what you get when you take, you know, teachings that are like supposed to be teachings, they're supposed to be metaphorical. It happens when you take them literal. When I mean, I don't get why you would want to do that in the first place. I mean, just you know, self control. You know, just behave yourself. You know,
I want to
cut it off.
I want to reflect something back to you that I've just recently learned regarding Uranus. I was experiencing some confusion because there's an aspect of invisibility, the unseen, around Uranus. However, oftentimes the helmet of invisibility is attributed to Pluto. And so they both are almost vying for the claim of this aspect of invisibility. And something I'm taking Uranus a little deeper. And, you know, in the planetary associations in the Enneagram, this will be the number 6, the loyalist with the shadow of fear or doubt. And I'm actually studying the creation mythology of the Greeks. And what I think I've discerned as a primary characteristic of Uranus is Schadenfreude, the getting pleasure out of other people's suffering. And that dynamic is so integral to civilization at large. It is so important that we identify Schadenfreude. And one example for myself is, you know, I have a strange guilty pleasure of watching self-defense videos on YouTube for analysis on what to do in conflict situations, low grade all the way to high grade. And some of those videos end up with some people getting shot and killed. Sometimes it's the protagonist in the video, and sometimes it's the antagonist. Sometimes people get their just desserts, and sometimes it's a tragedy when you watch these videos.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking back at what is this shadow in myself that is being drawn into these videos, and I realize, holy shit, I'm participating in Schadenfreude. You know what I mean? I shouldn't be watching videos where tragedy happens and getting anything out of it. I should not be getting anything out of somebody else's suffering. And I'm realizing this is the power of Uranus. This is what I was not seeing. This is what was hidden underneath the motivations. And right now I'm buzzing on this hard in my personal works, because I think a great amount of them showing and revealing the deportation centers. Exactly when the moon was on the planet of Uranus, they launched these videos of the deportation centers. And I predicted that 3 days in advance. And the reason I predicted it 3 days in advance is because I've come to appreciate the Schadenfreude. Uranus gets pleasure out of inflicting pain on other people. And this dynamic, I think, is what the circumcision is. We're passing on, we're making a rite of passage onto the children to come. And we take, and I shouldn't even say they take pride in this. Hey, kid, the price for participation in the realm is blood, sweat, and tears. Learn that lesson early. Learn it early. And they've instilled it onto the men for many generations. And I'm going to get a little contentious here. That rite of passage that men are instilled, this lesson of the cost of participation is blood, sweat, and tears. What is the judge going to ask from you to redeem yourself in front of the courtroom? It's going to be proof of your blood, your sweat, and your tears. That is the price of participation. And now I'm going to get a little far out, y'all. These ingredients are general suffrage. This is the passion of the Christ. This is true suffrage. This is we're carrying the burden. We're carrying the sins of the fathers on our backs. And then we open the floodgates and tell the ladies, hey, ladies, you want to get on some of this general suffrage? You want to get in on some of this general suffrage? We'll let the ladies come in on this. And you guys can all self-deputize to fight for the good fight so that women can vote. Come on in, ladies. Let's give women general suffrage. And the men are like, what the fuck are you doing? We are protecting the women from this. And you're throwing them out in the public in the workforce. So the concept of general suffrage, the concept of circumcision and blood offerings, and the women's are like, yeah, we give blood offerings once a month. Woohoo, we're going to outdo all the men. And we're like, no, you don't understand how we gave our blood, how we gave our sweat and our tears. So yeah, that's a very provocative statement, but I do think general suffrage and women's suffrage, right? That was the women's suffrage movement where they're like, yeah, we could do anything a man could do. We could do it better. And I'm like, yeah, well, in a great many ways, you already did. You don't need any more acknowledgement than you already were blessed with. So yeah, that's a little soapbox of mine.
You're muted. Franklin.
You're muted, buddy.
Franklin. Mr. Whisperer.
It's very interesting what you say about Uranus. Because I think that there's this definite relation between Uranus and not being alive. So Taoist numerology relates to the number 4 to not being alive, right? To passing from this world. And so you've got like this division of the 4 on the right and the 4 ascending, the 4 descending, the 4 ascending, and the adventurer, which chops everything in half. That's the chopper. That adventure, which is basically the key to the key to life is that pentagon, the pentagram, the 108 and the 72. It brings everything together, but Uranus is usually traditionally associated with number 4, and I see that like sort of here with the builder as related to what crystallizes dies, right? Because you got to be flowing like a river to be alive. And you need water in your body to keep you alive because water is the source of life. And the moment you don't have water in your body, everything crystallizes. It becomes dry and cold equals not being alive. Moist and warm equals being alive. When we're young, our body is moist and warm. And the older we get, the drier and colder our bodies become. So this dry coldness is crystallization of the builder. It's very dry, it's very cold. So that Uranus energy, interesting how you relate it to 6, because you see this connection between 4 and 6 here. So that's the feminine line of connection. If you look at I've got the feminine here and I've got the masculine. So the masculine obviously relates to the 369, echoed as 369 in the 3 triangles. So
that's what
each triangle is a number, but it carries the 369 in the fundamental triangle of the 3 sephirot, which repeat themselves through the Enneagram. But then we see this connection here of the feminine, and we see that 4 becomes 6. So you see how our different Enneagram interpretations are sort of linked and related, because 6 becomes that new life after the Mercury's representing that mercurial nature of constant changeability. When you add that to 4, because 4 is stagnancy, 4 is and here the interesting thing, when you go to aura anus, the light that shines out of our butts,
right? Uranus,
so,
the ultimate shadow for the puppet masters to reach their hand in and use us for usury from the 9th concentric circle of hell. I love it. Franklin, I love that. I love your Enneagram. It just lights my mind up in so many ways. I love that it connects in even more ways. And you even have it color coded. Like there's the blue frame and the orange frame, with the multiple shapes in it. Dude, this lights my imagination up. And I want us to just totally, it's not even agreeing to disagree. It's just the fact that we're using the same name. We're both saying Enneagram and pointing at different arrangements. You know what I mean? So I think that's where other people would look at us and be confused, because they're like, wait, but Slick is using this traditional Enneagram and Franklin's calling it an Enneagram and got different planets all over the place with different connections. So I just want to acknowledge that. I don't even think we're agreeing to disagree. I think we're agreeing to just be different, You know what I mean?
And you can see that the correlations, like my girlfriend described it as like looking at something face on or looking at something from an aerial view. And so looking at something face on, you'll see one thing. Looking at something from the top, you'll see another version of what you're looking at.
Big time.
So, but you're looking at the same thing, and you're going to see a different nuance if you look at it from this perspective or that perspective. And I find it really interesting, you know, like what you were saying about Uranus, because getting back to that, so that number 4, that ending of the descent. So I broke down the major arcana on the round table. I don't know if you saw that. I did a full breakdown of the major arcana as the journey of the fool, representing the first 10 elements, the Sephirot, of the materializing journey. And then the second 10 elements representing the inner reference of that material journey as a balance and a harmony. And they are divided snap bang in the middle by none other than Libra, which is the feminine pole of Venus. Libra obviously being the card of the scales and the sword, justice. And so justice is like that pivoting, and Libra obviously being the furthest out on the solar arc, has this incredible orientation of the entire wheel of the zodiac. And obviously as Lamet, as its Paleo-Hebrew symbol, which is an ox goad, is the one thing that can actually direct life force, which is the ox of Aleph. That ox can be directed by, and hence when you put the ox with the ox goad together, you get the name Aleph Lamet, Al, which is one of the most universal names of God used by the Kabbalah. So it's interesting how that Libra becomes the key. Now, when we go back into that, when we look at what comes prior to Libra, we get to this very interesting notion. One of them is the Chariot comes into alignment in a very important way. We've got the wheel of fortune. So when you look at the way the magic squares manifest these different archetypes in a cycle, you end up with Libra, which is number is 30, right? But in its numeration, it's 20, right? So it's number 2 as it relates to the major arcana, but as it relates to the Phoenician letter that represents that idea, it's a 3. It's interesting, this vibrational tilt between 3 and 2. And when you put the 3 and the 2 together, you end up with that 5, which is that mystical 5 in the center of the Enneagram, which is that pentagram that sort of manifests and drives the entire process. Without that, there could be no cohesion. That mutability element keeps the night and the day merging. So I see, like, yeah, if you look at this, when I look at 4 represents sunset, represents the 4 represents sunset. It represents the autumn solstice, in the same way that 7 represents the other side of that. 7 is often associated with 2. So 7 and 2 are always associated with each other. 4 and 1 are always associated with each other. So 4 is the harbinger, or the what 1 leads to, 1 and 4. And you can see this connection between 1 and 4 being so really fundamental. And when we look at 2 and 7, it's a mystic connection. It's much more, it's got a bounce off of 9. So Mars becomes that key that connects Neptune to the moon. And Neptune is a very similar in its vibration to Venus, right? Because Neptune represents going into those deep unconscious currents in our dreams. The artist, Venus, represents going in to express those unconscious currents that will produce art. So the one is masculine and the one is feminine. So we see how these masculine, feminine, the 6 is a very masculine number. The 7 to me seems like a feminine number. The 8 seems like a very masculine number. The 9 seems like a feminine number. And so as we move through this, we see this inversion with number 1 and 2, which I find really fascinating, because 1 represents everything. 2 represents everything divided into 2, right? So 1 is the whole thing. Oneness, to be one, is to be everything in one. 2 represents that potential between the outer and the inner. The 3 then becomes how that potential is acting within everything. 3 becomes the harness of force and form, and that force moving through form is represented as an expansion, which is Jupiter. Jupiter is the expansiveness, but Jupiter sits on the opposite side of Saturn, because Saturn and Jupiter always have to be in opposition. It's like really interesting how that then builds us to number 4, which is also the North Node, which is also to do with planning. Isn't it interesting how when we plan and we organize, we get stuck, we get set in our ways? And I think that number 4 represents like basically becoming so stagnant and stuck that we're unable to look outside and see the potential of Mercury. And that potential of Mercury then awakens that potential of life to grow, and that growth then takes us to the harmony of 6, because 6 is obviously, it's about harmony, right? It's the hexagram, and the hexagram is when all 6 planets are dancing around the sun. So when all 6 planets are dancing around the sun, then you have the circle with the dot in the side in the center of your hexagram, representing that there's this very powerful resonant frequency relation between Venus and the sun. Now, these obviously not your enneagram. This is just numerology and astrology. But when we look at the sun's energy and we look at Venus's energy, Venus to me is very interesting, because you can use copper in a magic rite if you don't have gold. If you can't afford gold, and in the old times, when they wanted to do a solar work, which is to do with, say, your career. So obviously the sun rules the 5th house. The 5th house is obviously the work of career and vocation. So if you want to do a magical spell or a work that relates to improving your career or your work, then you would usually want to use gold. But if you can't afford gold or you don't have access to gold, you can use the Venus metal. You can use copper and still do the spell. It's still going to work, because it carries such an interesting correlative vibration between the harmony of the artistic endeavor. And 1 also has a lot of creativity in it. So the creativity of 1 is brought to its stagnant stuckness. 4 is so uncreative, right? It gets so stuck that there's no creativity in 4, but it takes the adventurer, it takes Mercury to bring in that new potential so that 6 can just bring out the creativity of the arts. But that actually starts with the pioneering action of 1. So 1 is really the artist. So this is why, like, if you look into an astrological chart and you've got a lot of Leo in your chart, you could be a writer, right? You could be an artist. You could be a manager. You could be a leader. Anything that's to do with pioneering is going to come into that star chart. If you've got Venus in your chart and it's prominent, you're probably more likely to be a musician or a painter, and be so lost in the arts that you'll be abstract and like Libra is always looking to find the balance. It's always looking to sort of be tactful, to be able to dance between all the different energies, and it avoids confrontation. Taurus as well. Taurus likes to just chill and do their own thing. They're not really looking for confrontation unless you bring it on, like a bull. They won't do anything unless you bring it on, and when you do, they don't stop. That's the bull for you. So both of the personalities of Venus seem to hold this key to actualizing this peacefulness. And that peacefulness is very interesting because it's so un-sun-like. I hope that makes sense. Like the sun is actually quite an intense character. It's a bit of a egocentric expression. Yeah? The solar potential is like, I'm shining. Look at me. I'm shining. I'm on the stage. They want to be on the stage. That's a Leo trait, right? And so you want to be the center of attention. You want to be the sun. And so that comes from a creative impulse within, because everything that's coming out is original. So there's a powerful originality that comes in the solar potential, which is completely devastated by fall. And sun also represents prana in Vedic culture. So it represents the life force, and the pneuma as well. The sun, which is what you breathe in, is represented.
I've been trying to make a little comment in here. One of the things that I've been liking about the Enneagram, you can keep that back up. I was commenting on it. Was like I was kind of noticing, like lots of awesome stuff where the lines connect, but then I actually decided, I just looked across, right? And I thought things were interesting. Like you've got the activist on top for 9, right? And then you've got the adventurer and the builder. And I think it's the only one in there that reduces to its opposite singularity, right? And I look at it like, okay, the adventurer and the builder, when they join forces, they become the activist. They have an activist trait to them. And this follows the artist adventurer. That reduces into, it doesn't reduce the same because it goes to 2, but but those are qualities of the leader, right? It's like if you put the 2 qualities that are next to each other together, they make the disconnected quality on the opposite side of the wheel. The empath and the optimist, they become the mystic. It's like it's a system that's completely right there. You could draw more lines on this. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have to say, like, Franklin, if I were Gurdjieffian, I would be screaming high blasphemy 100,000 different ways, but I really don't care. And I'm not a Gurdjieffian, but a lot of what I'm seeing here is just like the opposite of what I've learned in the official, objectively established Enneagram system. Particularly what Zarelath just said. He was just talking about the 5 and the 4 and the 9, and I'm like, that's the exact opposite of what the Gurdjieff. Well, no, the Ichazo Enneagram. The 4, 5, and the 9 are the most removed from personality types, and the 8, 7, and the 3 is the most aggressive, and the 1, 2, and the 6 is the most compliant. They go along to get along, and I score high in the most compliant, and that's why I'm not going to scream high blasphemy, because I'm just going to go along to get along. Oh, you're muted. It
makes me think, when you're saying ag, it makes me think of agriculture. Number 8, high agriculture, high aggression potential. Saturn. Saturn's got that really like, I'm gonna do this. I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna do this. Like, it's like, have you ever picked a fight with a goat? Any of you?
Yes. Zarelath and I have quit. Zarelath and I have fought the same goat. We know how goats fight.
Man, I remember having this goat in the Himalaya, in Rajasthan, and it wanted to get my fruit, and I used to wrestle with this bugger, right? I used to get him into a lock. I used to twist him and like basically buckle him in. It was easier to wrestle a buffalo to the ground than a goat. Okay, he wasn't a fully adult buffalo, but he was big. He was like adolescent buffalo. They all wanted to come into my mud hut to eat my fruit, and it was easier to get a lock on that buffalo because he would give up. Once you get him in a lock and you lock him and you get his leg and you lock him and you lock him and you work your locks, he can't move. Within 5 minutes, he just gives up. The goat will never give up. And the moment he gets up, he comes right at you again. No matter how long you pin him down for 20 minutes, he's just going to wait. Yeah, I'm going to get up, buddy. When I do, you're going to get it.
Yes,
fight with a goat.
The ergonomics of wrestling a bull are integral to the Mithraic posture. In what is that called? The tetra. Oh, I forget what they call that. But yeah, the way he has to put his knee in the back of the bull is very important. That's extremely important. And then he's doing scapulomancy. That knife is going exactly where it should go for the reading of auguries, to extract that scapula to foretell the future. There's so much in the ergonomics of that statuary.
Do you know why I created this image, and why I did this work?
To make the world a better place. Yes, I totally know why.
When I saw the other Enneagram many years ago, back in the 90s, I had an aversion to it. I had an aversion to the geometry because the numbers weren't expressing the origin, and that just bugged the hell out of me. They weren't aligning with, and the shape that they had chosen bugged the hell out of me. When I realized it was created by a psychologist, and basically in between the 50s and the 70s, psychologists did it. They weren't numerologists. They weren't occultists. They weren't magicians. They were not educated in Chaldean systems of numerology, and they weren't educated in Vedic or any of these systems. And when you really look at all of these systems, they're all essentially the same. They come from the same root, which is very, very, very old roots of the difference between the Vedic and the Western astrology. The only difference is the Vedic astrology uses sidereal mathematics, which is based from the moon, and the Western astrology, as we know it, has accepted this solar being the focus. So as instead of focusing from the earth in relation to the moon, the astrology is focusing from the sun. But other than that, everything is essentially the same. The numbers are the same, the archetypes, everything, the meanings, everything's pretty much on par, the same thing. So it's very interesting how this Enneagram that was given to us, I always thought it was a deep state program that was created in order to create a disassociation. And in order for that,
let me jump on that.
Actually, before you jump on that, let me say goodbye, because I'm going to be on later tonight in a show. So I want to have I need a little bit of time in between that and that to take care of a few things. So I wasn't sure how long our show was going to go, and this is 3. And believe me, I could go on forever, but I also got something I got to do
buddy,
tonight, and I want to take care of my personal needs and so on and so forth.
Big love, honor, and respect, champion.
Enjoy your
Sarah
birthday.
Lath.
It's been good. It's been good, bro. Enjoy your evening. Enjoy your birthday. Enjoy whatever it is that you're gonna do. Don't do anything I wouldn't do.
Thank you so much.
I hope you've got some awesome chronic.
I love doing this stuff.
I hope you've got some awesome chronic to celebrate with, brother.
You've seen me on it.
Good
for you, man. Good for you.
That's why he's the high magician.
Yeah, man. Joyous Earth Strong, Zerlath. Give my love to Robert Phoenix, too.
I shall.
All right.
You were saying, Gabriel?
Yeah, this is important. This is what's important. This is where it's like, please don't let anything I say discourage you, because your mission is to improve the world and make it better and idealize the system. And that is totally what needs to happen. What I'm doing is exposing exactly what you ran away from. When you said this looks like a deep state program to disassociate, I'm running head on into that. I'm running head in onto that. And so the Oscar Ichazo, and I want to say, I think a lot of people get caught up in a whole new scale of the cults of personality. And oftentimes when subject matter comes forward and people are like, I think Greyhorn, you were talking about when I mentioned Freud, I think you had a knee-jerk reaction like, oh yeah, fucking Freud. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, don't run away. Don't run away. You have to actually interrogate these assholes. You got to put them through the grill. You got to test their work, and don't let their name be so much that you turn a blind eye right away. That's a knee-jerk reaction. And so what I'm doing with Oscar Ichazo's work is I'm putting his actual claim to the test. I'm not going to let the mantle he wears scare me off. I'm going to dig in and I'm going to put his claim to the test. And Franklin, I'm getting heavy positive results. His claim is proving to be the fundamental bedrock from which all culture has been built out upon, called the touchstone. It's called the test. It's called the symposium. And it is correct. It doesn't make me comfortable. I'm not doing this because it makes me comfortable. I'm not doing this because I think it makes people healthy. I'm doing this because I want to find the root source of where people have been miswired, misled. And I happen to have a grand overarching theory I have not talked about yet on my project. And I'm just going to share it here, but it's going to take a long time to substantiate it. And I'm going to do that in some of my upcoming works. And we kind of breezed on it a week ago, Franklin. And it has to do with, there is exactly one alteration that I want to make to the Enneagram. I think there are rites of passages hiding out in this. When I was younger, my priority would have been to switch the 4 and the 1, to understand the masculine to the feminine. That is a rite of passage. I already experienced that. And so if I were talking to a younger person, I would be talking about this 4 to the 1 thread from Mars to Venus and the masculine and the femininity of that. But now I'm at a different stage in my life. And the priority for me now to make a healthy change on the Enneagram, that is the touchstone, the bedrock, the objective truth. It's not what I want, it's what is. And that change is the 5 to the 8. And we talked about that last week when we were talking about the catharsis of tragedy. And what is the catharsis of tragedy in culture? And what does it mean? And sure enough, in my path of elucidating why the 5 and the 8 should switch, in the psychic path work that I'm doing, I run into the schadenfreude of Uranus. I find out that people are getting pleasure out of seeing people in concentration camps. That is a dark lesson. And I'm going to be the one blowing my horn till the day I die about schadenfreude, because people who, if you don't call it what it is on the face of it, then just insinuating or looking in its direction, people are going to call you a black pillar. If you just generally talk about how we get pleasure out of seeing people suffer, they're going to call you a black pillar. They're going to plug their ears, switch themselves off, and go to sleep again. The word black pill is just the new age version of conspiracy theorist, y'all. We need to step up our game and thicken our skin. And you can't pay money to get your skin thicker. I am happy to be the one. I'll be your bullet man all day to tell you that this is objectively how it is. This is objectively why it sucks. And so my adjustment in the Enneagram is not rearrange everything and rewire it to the Vedic. It is simply the 8 of Saturn needs to drop to the 5. What was the center square of the Saturnian magical square? It was the number 5 in the dead center of the magical square of Saturn. Mercury needs to move to the number 8. And by doing Mercury into the number 8 position, we no longer associate with nouns. We stop being and we start becoming. And this has been squandered in history when your last name was no longer your family's job. When we stop using the job that your family does for your last name, and we get all the name magics of it way back in history through all the ages, you should have been shoemaker, and you used to be the miller. You used to be Miller because your calling was the action of your future tense verb, and it was your association of your last name. And so when I put Mercury into the number 8 position, just one change, not a whole bunch of changes, just one change, then everything makes sense based on what we already knew. So that's my soapbox. I'm sticking to it. And the thing is, I want to say this too. It's beautiful that your Enneagram has provoked me to get to the fucking point on what I'm working with, on what this journey has been for me. Because looking at your Enneagram, I'm like, oh my God, it's going to go off and it become anything, everything, relativity. And I'm like, no. This means I need to really step up. And it turns out exactly the change from the 8 to the 5. It's already in the symposium. It's the part of the symposium I don't talk about a lot because it's confusing for people and it's already complicated. I don't need to make things more complicated. But sure enough, at the end of the symposium, they play musical chairs. And when they're done playing musical chairs, guess what, Franklin? The 5 has moved to the 8, and the 8 is sitting in the 5 position. And so what I feel compelled to do to renovate or perfect the Enneagram, it's already in Plato's work. And I'm just now finding the words to convey it.
I think we are different purposes. Like all I'm doing is I'm creating when the Enneagram that I'm bringing forth is just for magic. It's for the practitioner. It's for practical magic. It's for people that are interested in developing how to use practical magic and to see how do you break down the sigils using an Enneagram. So for example, this Enneagram is going to have like different kinds of flowers, different kinds of resins, different kinds of animals, different kinds of animals on it. And it's going to break down like if you want to do a spell for this or for that or for that. This is about that dial, and that is the dial of like
the doctrine. So, the doctrine of signatures.
Interesting signatures.
Doctrine of signatures. Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Like I think that they're two. This is what I was saying. Like I'm not really. I did my time as an activist, and so your Enneagram is like focused on the 9 vibration. From my perspective, I'm focusing on the 7 vibration.
That's
and the
awesome.
7 and the 5. Like those are the 2 key. So it's the mystic inward spiral and the 5 outward spiral. And the way these 2 become the mystic number of 3 expansion, which is like manifestation. So like why you have to chant something 3 times for it to be a chime, you know, that how to generate good luck, how to generate these. So this is what defines the difference. And that was what bugged me about the other one was it's more a conceptual Enneagram where you can look at the conceptual patterns that they, I don't like that word, they are using to formoodle us. Though I've sort of more interested in the mystic arts. So for my life, it's been more about practice than it has been about theory. So so shamanism is really totally about just sitting and going into a trance and going out of your body. That's really what it's about. It's not about all the other stuff. So I'm trying to bring the magical side into a simple breakdownable image where people can turn the dial and turn the dial here when they turn the dial here. And like that's why the geometry matters so much to me, because I want to reflect this sacred geometry. Like, when you look at it, right? What do you see? You see it in both of them. You see that number 5, right? That 5. You see it in the other Enneagram too. The shape of that house. That I find the what's the word? What would I use to call it? I find. Let me get the other one and put it on here too, because it's there's one, and it's nice. It's colorful. I like colorful. I like color.
Yeah, I want to say I really look forward to playing around with this shape. It just, my thoughts are too fast for my words. My thoughts are way too fast for my words. So I need to like slow down, take time, and like put your system next to my system and see what kind of fascinating brain babies come out.
I was thinking a while ago that you could put this over the other Enneagram.
Yeah.
Like I was looking at that and I thought of doing that. And I thought, no, I want to deal with the mystical Enneagram at a later time. And there's 2 versions of the mystical Enneagram as well, by the way. I've shown the when you break the supernals into 3 groups, then you've got a different system. Like, for example, so just getting back to this, here you can see the number 5 is hinted at here as well, right? it's almost trying to hint at a number 5 in the center. It's not a number 5, but your brain goes, is that a 5?
You're
No, it's not
so
a 5.
right. There is a free floating number 5. I have done experiments. Frankly, you're talking about some stuff that was way off in La La Land, where the number 5 seemed to be the key to some kind of missing link. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And so here you see it in a different way. You see this 5 that's trying to spin around the orange. You see it and your eyes go, is it a 5? No, it's not. Is it a 5? No, it's not. You're constantly like playing hopscotch, trying to catch up, and it never quite. And then the blue tries to suggest it's a hexagram, but I'm not a hexagram. But it's hinting like hexagram. And you look at it, no, it's not a hexagram. It almost looks like it's trying to make a hexagram, but it creates a sense of spinning. So I want to actually develop yantras using this geometry, and yantras with different elements. Yantras for working with different planetary energies. So here I'm working with the orange and the blue, which is essentially the Mercury and the Jupiter vibration. And so I've brought the 5 in, the feminine aspect of the 5, and the optimism of Jupiter to bring the earth, the sky father, he blew into the world, and it came to be. And the range of light, the or range, the big fullest range of light. Mercury's got the biggest range on it. It's the only sign that has the crescent, the circle, and the cross in it. All the others have got 2. But you also find it when you look at Uranus. Not Uranus, sorry, Pluto, the plow toe, which is the center of the wheel, right? The plow, and that plow that tows the wheel around.
Right. And they're the two extremes of each other, right? Mercury is the first planet, Pluto is the last planet, and it's got that Monas hieroglyphica that he told everybody should be moving, it should be changing, it is transmogrifying.
Which is interesting because Mercury is associated with Wotan, with Odin. So he is, the most high. Pluto is the underworld,
kind of the most low.
Is Hades. Another fascinating thing comes to mind in the Divine Comedy. Dante Alighieri writes that the inner circles of hell, like the closer you get to the most inner circle of hell, the colder it gets. Which would make sense with Pluto, because the further away from the sun you get, the fucking colder it gets, and especially if you're like way on the outer ring, and sunshine is basically like, what is that? I mean, I joke about it often here in the Netherlands. Like there's this hot yellow thing in the sky. What the hell is that? But on Pluto, that would be even more rare, making it just incredibly cold. So it would make sense that if the if the rings of the planets are also the rings of hell, the further you get into hell, into the unknown, really, the colder it gets. It makes a lot of sense.
Something that I'm fascinated by, Socrates was very proactive in changing people's relationship to Pluto, this underworld deity. He really wanted to be like, listen, everybody's running away. People don't even say his name in public. They're that superstition. They won't even mention him because it's like really, really, it's like worse than profanity to mention Pluto in public. They only maybe whisper it in the private. And Socrates was really trying to be like, no, listen, his name means wealth and riches. And I think Plato, through Socrates, is trying to really foster the warrior spirit so that people won't run away in battle, so that people will actually run towards it and seek out valor. And so there is something of social engineering that And the reason why it's important, that's why Socrates and Plato are so important, because they were the original social engineers, and they're just telling you why they're doing it. They are totally disclosing the fuckery of rewiring people's mythology. This is the original censorship. And so when you understand what they were up to and you look at what they're doing with storytelling today, you're like, these are just kind of the same aspects. But I want to share this with you. Alighieri actually split Pluto into different jurisdictions. He made a lesser Pluto in the story very subtly. I think he's not deified. He's more of a guardian of one of the realms. He's not really like, he's not the King Poobah at the bottom of the ninth circle. There's like this kind of a guard whose name is Plutinus or Plutonius, or some derivative of that, who's a lesser divinity, and then the grand Pluto is at the bottom of the circle. But I just want to mention how also Dante Alighieri is kind of, I see him as painting the afterlife as in a class system. That like, oh, if you're really bad, if you do what we really don't want, you go to the deepest part. But if you only kind of fuck up, then you get somewhere in the middle. You might be in the 5th layer of hell. And so I just love that he turned the afterlife into varying degrees of punitive potential.
Which makes sense. I mean, it's very human to do so. Like, yeah, crime is crime, but there are lesser crimes, there are worse crimes. Like that's what we at least are supposed to do with our judicial system. You don't punish a shoplifter in the same way as you punish someone who is accused of, manslaughter, for example.
Exactly. Such a good point. And what really gets me is how the controllers, the archons of our day, they get away with bloody murder of the highest order, and they
Quite
never
literally,
they never have to pay for it. So in the most literal sense, they are like the gods. The gods of the Greeks were outside of morality. When Ulysses or Odysseus, when he was on the island of Calypso, she offered to make him like a god. And if he would have said yes, the price would have been he would lose all of his morality. He would never have to worry about right or wrong again. He could just go willy-nilly off and do whatever he wants. Do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law for eternity on end. And in the most fascinating way, that is exactly what the archons of our day are conveying onto us, is we get away with anything.
It's funny that you say like they don't have to, they'll never pay for it, because that is exactly what they are doing. But with physical or more and more digital currency, they are literally paying for it. Like if you have enough money, you can pay for everything and everyone, really, because everyone has a price.
Right.
Every man has a price. There is a certain number for everyone, which with you can be bought, and you'll look the other way when shit happens.
Yeah, and the Christians are kind of playing the role of Visa MasterCard by saying, oh yeah, they can do that if they want to here, but when they get on the other side, they're really gonna get it.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of also the Germans in World War II. Wir haben es nicht gewusst. We didn't know. We had no idea that was happening. Yep. Bullshit. Yeah, you did. Yep. You just chose to look the other way. It's a conscious choice that you made, and now you're trying to save your own ass. You're trying to save your soul by saying, "Oh, I didn't know it was happening." Come on.
They didn't want to be black pillars.
Yeah, that too. It's such. I guess the New Age thing goes like so far back. First you have to be all love and light and like fucking ignore, the whole dark thing that is going on. Because as long as we ignore it, as long as we don't acknowledge it, we're not giving it power. We're not giving it energy, so it doesn't manifest. And every like the black pill, kind of despise how everything has become a pill, though.
Isn't that true? Yes, they've moved it into a pharmacose paradox or pharmacose paradigm. Yeah.
Yeah. But now it's, like even the slightest negative thing, like black pill, or even, the gray pill. I'm fucking proud to be a gray horn. I walk the middle path.
Yeah, buddy.
I can switch back and forth if I have to. But like the slightest bit of negativity is like, no, not here. Not here. This is a space of love and light. Incredibly toxic. Not something you want to be associated with.
I think it's very, very interesting, this idea of the black pill. Like this. Like I don't think
I just want to point out
we need a pill.
It rhymes with black pea pill. Black people were the original conspiracy theorists, y'all. We owe such a debt to the black folks for setting this game up a fucking millennia back. But yeah, black people is kind of in the twilight there.
Pea pills is what you need when you get older, right?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Franklin.
Like this idea of the black pill, and I mean, I realized this when I was a child. When I was 12, I was like, I slammed the history book down. I'll never open this book again. But do you know how many times I bent down to take cuts because I refused to open a history book? And I said to my headmaster, I refuse to open that textbook. I will not open it. It offends me. It's an insult to my intelligence. I will not open it. I'll bend for a friend, sir, if you're my friend. And then of course they give you another one for making a cocky comment. But I was in an all-boys school, so you could make jokes to a point and just take the cuts. But like I used to take cuts, or I would rather take cuts, and I got cuts almost every day. Like literally, I almost got beaten every day because I will not play your game. So I can completely relate to how messed up this world is. But I think it's beyond black pill. I think it's at the point where it's not just the pill that you take, it's the bloody reality you're in is already that. You don't need a black pill. You just go around and that's what it is.
Just look around.
The systems are all corrupt. We need to play this game just to cope. And if we don't play the game, then we're ostracized or worse, from society one way or another. It's a financial game. It's this game. Now it's like, it's a woke game, right? It's like, now you got to watch what you say. It's a whole nother, that freedom of speech thing is trampled. At least in our young days, we had freedom of speech, right? We were still allowed to talk in the 80s. Yeah? We were allowed to say what we wanted to say. No ways. Now you get into trouble if you say what you want to say. In those days, you said what you wanted to say, and people would be like, and that would be it, right? So, like, I think they've gotten into the engineering so deeply that, and this is a really interesting discussion on the roundtable. This was really what the discussion was about on Saturday. It was about the mystic or the activist, and like I believe that you can change the world by changing your inner being. So like the magic is so powerful that if you go within yourself and change your reality, that this reality out there will change. And if enough people go within themselves and say, you know what, if everybody sat down to meditate at once on the whole planet, I reckon we can change the laws of physics.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we create we already create our own reality, and it's been proven. It's been scientifically proven. There are papers that, that show that. And also just in like the most superficial sense, if you're feeling down on your luck, if you're feeling kind of depressed, if, like you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, for example, your whole day is going to be shit. You're going to stub your toe. You're going to miss the bus. You're I don't know, like you're trying to get lunch and your card gets declined. It's because you're already in that mindset. Like you're already like feeling down. You're already kind of depressed. You're already low. You're already black-pilled. for the day. So, you know, you're kind of expecting already for things to go wrong. And therefore, you're making it happen. But when you like, well, if you change your mindset, you know, it's all in the mind. You can do anything if you set your mind to it. It's fucking true.
Yeah, buddy. I love one of the Greek definitions of poverty. This is the Stoics. The definition of poverty is the belief that what you already have is not enough. And that little twist of the thoughts, that little shift in the paradigm is so empowering, and it really fills your cup right away.
That's a
I like
beautiful
that.
word. And when I look at it, I don't hear the word you're saying. I hear you saying power T. So Saturn's T,
Mm-hmm.
cutting off your power.
Right.
And Saturn relates to money. Always like you know, we associate money with number 2, with ISIS, hence the dollar bill. So they've switched it around for us. They've switched the 2 and the 8 around. They think they're clever. They think they got us. But traditionally, money was related to Saturn, right? Like the first coins. Like it's you know, if we go back into Europe, those first things, Saturnalia, they were like, you know, related to this concept of trading this, because it related to grain. You know, the coin was like a certain amount of grain, so that coin got me my grain, and it was all about grain, Saturn. But so like money in modern days, like our grain, right? Like how much grain have you got? I got a lot of grain. I got money in my pocket. I can buy grain. I got a full larder of grain potential in my pocket. But so
your bag.
that idea of power being cut by T, that's an interesting concept when we look at that T,
Yeah, man.
because that T then represents
Mm-hmm.
also the number 400 in a sense, on one level, which is going out of life. You know, you get put on a crucifier, you get put there to end your life. That's what it's for, right?
Right. You know, I love pointing out how still today, Babylon mentality is when your belongings own you. When your material obligations are so much that you can't even decide to pack up and move on in a day. You have to actually plan months in advance, and you have to chew away at the list of shit just to move forward in your life. But the antithesis of Babylon mentality is to be agile, to be ready to pack up and move in within 24 hours. And a lot of the dynamic that we're talking about, Franklin, is that 8 to the 5 switch that I'm talking about. You know, the Mercury and the Saturn, where it's like, it basically, like metaphorically, what my switch is selling all the shit that owns you, getting some cash and some potential charge for your pocket, lightening your load, and put Mercury in place of Saturn. So you've rid yourself from the limitation in the lead, and now you're nothing but potential. And that is no longer thinking of yourself as a noun and only thinking of yourself as a verb, for as long as you can sustain that.
I lived my whole life like that. Like when I got to 15, like I said to my mom, forget me going to university. I'm not going to study anything. She was like, what do you mean? I'm going to go. My wife's mapped out. Don't worry about it. It's good. I'm good to go. The occult is going to be my life. And so my whole life was like, basically, I measured my life by that standard. Can I pick up everything I own within 20 minutes and put it on my back and leave? And that's how I lived my whole life, up until the point that I decided to have a child.
Oh my
Gosh.
Yeah.
Now I'm in a new world. I got a kid. Like, okay, I can still put him on my shoulder, right? Just about.
Just for a couple more years. That's so true. So true.
Yeah, being a father, having kids, it changes everything, you know, for the best. Absolutely. I adore my kids. I love my
Rites of
kids,
passage.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it is a rite of passage, because you are forced to grow. You are forced to think. You are forced to
Sacrifice.
Yeah, you're gonna sacrifice so much. I mean, in the first month, it's mostly gonna be sleep. Um, like 3 hours a night. Oh, I fucking wish. Uh, no, but it's the sacrifices that you do make. Time, money, effort, energy, everything that you have, you own. It's all worth it, because I mean, I just like, I have to look at my son, and I'm like, oh man, like you're a little me, and like he quite literally is. Like, he is so incredibly my son. You won't believe it. And then when I look at my daughter, or when my yeah, like she's turning 10 soon, so she's becoming mouthy as well. I mean, her poor mother is so incredibly stressed out. But like, she is, then again, she is daddy's girl. So like, when she puts on those puppy eyes and just like asks me like, oh please, it's like, fuck, okay. Fine, I'll get you whatever it is that you like, because I love you so damn much.
Yeah, man. Yeah. My buddy Chance, he has a newborn little girl.
Nice.
Yes. And I'm so honored he actually gave her my name for her middle name. She's little Gracie Gabriella Garton. It's such an honor. It's such an honor. And
Triple G.
yeah,
Nice.
you got it. You got it. Yep.
That's cool.
And so I was telling him that it's as though he and Jenny have birthed a new pulse star. There's a new center hub, a new axis of attention, that everything revolves now around her.
Yeah.
And Chance and Jenny are more like the Cepheus and Cassiopeia constellation, just a couple degrees away from, always like helicopter parents, moving around that center of attention on the pole star.
Yeah. I mean, a child can, or is absolutely a light in your life. I have discovered so much about myself through being a father, and discovered a lot about my own upbringing, about my own parents, found out why they did the things that they did. Because like, especially early on, I caught myself so much like sounding exactly like my father. Like I'd say something to my daughter, or I'd say something to my son, and I'm like, hi dad.
I love
Good,
it.
channeling.
I think it's necessary.
Yeah.
Because our parents would have told us what we needed to hear, the genetic tree. So our child is going to be a little bit like us, just like we were a little bit like our parents. So what our parents told us was actually what we needed to hear. And so we will probably end up echoing that, because life is an Enneagram, right?
Yeah.
Starts again, it's the same crap, like a day, like a month, like a year, same crap. Okay, here we go again, one more time, like one life to the next life.
Yeah, brothers. I think I got to get boogieing. I'm going to put together the next Slick Dissident video, and I got to go back through the symposium to get all the goodies to bring to bear.
Big love, brother.
Yes.
Been great having you on, man.
Yes,
As
this
always.
was a joy and a pleasure. Happy day number 8 of the Navaratri. Praise Mahagauri. And tomorrow, let's get ready for Siddhidatri to come into place for some nice resolution. Love you guys.
Tomorrow is the completeness. Yeah. It's interesting that Gauri, I've always had a connection with Gauri. Gauri is also Parvati, isn't it? Gauri is, I always see Gauri as Shiv Shakti. Like when you think of Gauri, you're thinking of that feminine wrapped around the masculine, like in its. So, like
Mhm.
it's a very engaging feminine.
Yeah. This that's interesting because the eighth muse always has a wreath. She's often signified by a garland wreath. So yeah, big respect, fellas. Much love
Om
to the
Shanti.
chat. Yeah, much love to the chat.
Big love to everybody. Take it easy, brother. I'm also gonna have to run because my little boy's his mom's still reading the Bible to him. It's like after 9. I'm like, oh, I have to go and
man.
play daddy now. Like lay it down. Like, okay, like this is bedtime, buddy.
That is
9
the
p.m. and you're still awake?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I still have to have dinner, and I need to hit the hay also in like an hour because I have to get up early because
Time-
work and such.
Yep.
'Cause
We got to
podcasting doesn't. Sorry.
we got to shift out of shaman showman into the worldly, into the mundane and the worldly.
Unfortunately, so podcasting doesn't pay my bills just yet. It will. It will. I'm
Yes,
making
sir.
it goddamn happen. But
Give thanks and praise.
Where'd your feather go? What feather is it, by the way?
That's an eagle.
Ah,
Yeah.
I actually was watching a hawk fly. I think I wasn't sure if it was an eagle or a hawk just 2 days ago from the mountain where we climb in the mornings. And I was watching one
what?
fly. Oh,
I think you're right. I think it's hawk. I think I misspoke. Now that
Yeah.
because I got a picture of him. No, it's a hawk. You're right.
yeah.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Much love.
Om
see you,
Shanti.
man.
Big love, brother. Take care. Well,
Nice.
brother, it's been an absolutely lovely show.
For sure. Fucking 3.5
We
hours.
should do this again. Multi-stream, a lot of fun.
Yeah, we should.
Busy
we should
chat,
do this
huh?
more often.
Thank you all in the chat. I hope you guys got what you came for. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had a thrilling time. I loved a lot of the ideas I saw moving through the conversation. It was a very energized and active conversation, stimulating,
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
driving us unconsciously on the side drive. It's like when you're flying a helicopter and somebody else has got the joystick as well. Not that I've ever flown one, but I've been in a helicopter when I was a little kid, and watching these guys with these 2 joysticks. That was interesting to watch, you know.
I bet.
Big
All
bless
right,
to you, brother.
I'm gonna call it night. Blessings to you. Much love. And yeah, we ought to do this again. This is fun. It's a lot of fun.
And for those of you that don't know, just a heads up, if you're not on my channel, you can find Stein's channel there, Stein Forks. You can find all Gabriel's channel, or probably a lot of you are on Gabriel's channel. You can find Zerilot. I'm going to add Zerilot to my channels, so you'll be able to find his channel there too. But it should be on the. If you look at the information, you'll see our tags in YouTube. And Slick Dissident is at Slick Dissident, so you'll be able to check us out. Hit us all up with a sub, and we've all got a lot of interesting content, all different, but
Yeah.
sort of all working together in a sense. So it's check it out. We've got a diehard podcaster here. He does like a lot of shows and a lot of interviews.
Yeah.
So you'll find there's like all sorts of content on his. I've been sort of, well, the round table, but also like you've got, I've got 108 sequence lectures and another 108 sequence of lectures, which is more about sort of engaging with the cosmological principles. What bug is this? He keeps, every time I try and pick him up, he runs away, he goes and hides away behind the other side of my thing. He's like this little bug cruising around. I want to put him out the window so he's safe. Anyway, sending big love to all of you. Take it easy. Keep the smile alive. And Om Shanti.
It's been good, folks. Until next time.